Welcome to Magus in the Media. We got a special one for us all tonight. The topic, can anime actually teach you magic? And no better guest for this fine evening than Jin the Ninja, a fellow Occult Reject. Hello, Jin. How are you doing today?
What is up, Brandon? Thank you so much for having me on. I am your first live stream guest, as you told me pre-recording. So I feel it's pretty sick, right? Like to be the first. So I love that, obviously. And obviously we're going to talk about anime in occultism and anime, which I know has been a long-running theme of your show. And also I have been doing a long form, like many episode series with Monte Carlo. Shout out Monte Carlo and Eric at Organized Meat Bazillion Plus.
Nice.
I did two different things. I did one on Ralph Bakshi, so we were doing his whole kind of oeuvre, all his films, like from a Kabbalistic perspective. And then with Monty, I've done Bleach, Freerin, D. Gray Man, some old, more. We wanted to choose ones that were less, top 25, my anime list.
Right.
We deliberately went for more of like sleeper series. Not that Bleach is a sleeper series, but I think that it didn't reach its like apex popularity as like Naruto did. And I think there's something to like be discussed there. So yeah, anyways, we did that, and I've done episodes on Dondada and all of these kinds of cool shows. And so I know that you and I have been talking about doing a series for us, like with each other, and also then all this episodes you do for your show. Sometimes I hear you, when I tune in, I hear you talk about like Chinese Donghua, like the Chinese animated series. Obviously, I'm mixed Hapaborean, so it's a big part of my Twitter identity anyway. And
yeah, definitely, right?
I mean, it is part of my real life identity too, but I mean, it is a big, it's probably more pronounced on Twitter. It's not like I walk around with like Hapaborean pride flags, but
but maybe we should start selling that as merch. I don't see why not.
Mean, I really, we gotta figure something out with like the design and stuff. But yeah, we'll get back to you on that.
Please,
so I love that you talk about that, because a lot of them are really good. I have not done a series on Chinese animated, or I haven't done an episode, excuse me, on Chinese animated series, but I do have an episode coming out tomorrow. So I know it's a live stream. So tomorrow morning, Friday the 13th, I have an episode with Master Gongsun, who's a Taoist priest and a YouTuber as well.
Wow, so that's amazing. Nice. And
where
can they check that out?
Anyone can check it out on Apple, Spotify, or my Substack. I love Substack it's like so great. I think it's like, it makes so much sense for me. I don't know why I didn't do it before. Anyways, thresholdsaints.substack.com. You can always check out our group show as well, The True Grey Lodge, the TRVE Greylodge.com, which is live, and we will have be live streaming Friday Night Gnostic Mass tomorrow. It'll be more of a free range episode. Nice. So we live stream it on X, and then we record it for YouTube. So you can check us out there on YouTube. And thank you, Brandon. And obviously on all of our Occult Rejects work that you and I have done, that Matt Murrah has done, that Joshua the Branch has done, and that my other co-host Solar Exile has done on Threshold Saints. So, there's a large body of work, and we all kind of are cool with each other to a degree. And so, I think it's great that we can all cross promote and, be on each other's shows. Shout out Eros too. And Vanessa, I saw in the chat.
Yes, exactly. Nice. And shout out to all those people. Yeah, it is quite fantastic. It's something that I had always wanted before I started doing creating my own brand with all this type of thing. And it's so beautiful how when, it's kind of goes hand in hand with the whole magic thing, is that at least the mysticism and understanding the synchronicities of the world is that once you're ready and you actually start doing what, what some call your will, or tapping into how the universe flows, then all of a sudden out of nowhere, a person like yourself and Nick and the Rejects and everything along that just kind of came along with it. And so it was so beautiful to open myself up to being able to hang out with you guys over the globalized world that everyone wants to like be so down on. But however, it's creating this kind of thing for us all. So I think there's some beauty in it.
I mean, as you know, Brennan, I do believe that we are in the next aeon. I promise I won't plug myself or Aeon of the Dot or anything, but I do believe we are in the next aeon. I think part of the living in that aeon is the nexion, or is the
Yeah.
nexus, or is the ipsos, which is the mass, the many interconnected nodes, you could say, like nodes on a turtle's back. And and that's what we are in cyberspace, right? And we
Oh yeah.
choose each other. We actively recognize and choose each other. I think it's really profound if people thought about it. And like, yes, there is a dimension to social media that is a complete carnal ground, to use like my tantric language,
Yeah.
but I think there can be something beautiful there. And I think that the beauty is not to be, I don't like anything sleazy or cheesy. This is well known. I'm like pretty conservative, I would say, even though I'm an edgelord, which sounds like a paradox, and maybe it is. But I don't like it. I think that friendship is important, and I think it actually is can be rather beautiful. So
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's such a fascinating thing. So to spark off the conversation into the anime realms and even talking about the initial Donghua, I've only ever seen one, right? This Chinese anime. But why I bring it up is because for me, it's like some of the first videos I did was on Lord of the Mysteries by a gentleman by the name of Cuttlefish who loves to swim. Funny, I love that pen name. But the idea of that whole anime, and I've talked about it before, is or Donghua is going to be that you're mixing together Lovecraftian ancient old ones, the Cthulhian mythoses, with steampunk, and then you get the whole transmigration idea, or what they call isekai, right? And so along with that, you get this character who's in this world, and he has the ability to tap into this astral realm. And so the idea, the astral realm connected to each individual magician's astral temple. And why this is so profound, and it works out for what we're talking about just in the beginning with meeting all these people, and being able to choose, is that the main character takes on this deity motif called the Fool. So in this world, the magic of this world is actually deeply connected to the Western esoteric tradition, and they're using a lot of tarot, Kabbalah, mythology with all of that in hand, as well as divining and seership, and then all kinds of others. Everyone's got a pathway that they work themselves up to high level beyonders, which is their superpowers or their magical undertones. And so with that, why I bring it up is because Klein, the main character, playing this godlike character, the Fool in the astral realm, he has the ability, what he created, he called it his Tarot's Club. And so he was able to bring in different people who are also doing ritual magic and mysticism, and they tapped in, and these people were worshiping or doing a ceremonial ritual towards this deity, this fool-like character. At first they were just doing it on their own, and he was able to feel their intention. And so what he ends up doing is pulling their astral bodies to this astral realm so they could create the tarot club, and then each member took on a certain major arcana motif. So I find that fascinating to what we're talking about, if you catch my drift.
absolutely. The one that I like to cite, but not the only one that I've seen many. Soul Land is really good. If anyone's looking for one out there, Soul Land. I forgot the Mandarin title. I apologize, but it is an incredible series. It's all about Taoist cultivation and magic powers and being reborn in new worlds with different cultivation techniques. So he can import his memories from his past life, but he cannot. They don't have the same kind of magic in the new world, so he has to kind of adapt his old system to the new world. So very interesting, obviously. But another one that I love to cite is the Grand Master of Demonic Cultivation, because I think it's really interesting, and it looks at more of a left-hand path Taoism, like ghost cultivation on the carnal ground, usually a battlefield, taking in the evil yin spirits into yourself. I'm not telling anyone to do that. That's what he does that's what he does in the film, but he's actually a good person. So it's the whole thing is like the sort of theurgic exercise of like exorcism from within, and like temperance of spirit. But he's kind of like a Taoist good boy. He's not a good boy. He's a Taoist hero, meaning that there are anti-hero elements to him, and he's obviously a drunkard, and there's other things. But he has positive and negative qualities, I think, is a very Taoist
Yeah.
way to put that. So I love that series, and I think it, something you and I love to bicker about on Rejects is sort of like contemporary left-hand path ideas, and it's like validity or use in contemporary magic, and like
Yeah.
and just in occult podcasting in general, and like how open people should be about it, or like how accepting we should be of those ideas. And
Yeah.
so I think it's just a good series for people to watch if they're interested in Taoism and also the left hand path.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a great series. When we're done with this, I'm gonna have to actually get a list of these. But what I found fascinating, and so I can, hit the Gnostic, archonic, algorithmic gods, so everyone understands that generally are gonna try to stay on a certain kind of old gen versus new gen. What makes the best magicians canon? Just because then we can have a nice little setup for trying to understand. Obviously, I think we both realize that both have their place. But what's fascinating is when we were coming up with the topic, I asked you for at least two of them. And what's funny is I didn't know either of the two. And so I realized that I think your Hapoborean side is going to pretty much tap me right away in the beginning of this. But I got a strong ending with some of my anime that I'm thinking of. But can you give me what is these two that you gave me for the first that kind of hits on our thumbnail that I created?
Okay, so I kind of cheated in a way, because I did tell you, because I did tell you, like, oh, I'm going to choose like ones that are pre 2010.
Uh-huh.
And so that wasn't quite true, but I definitely chose series that people have not seen or watched, that in terms of popular like anime Twitter or anime TikTok, these are not like very popular series. These are definitely more, I mean, Noragami was popular. It was popular in Japan, and it was popular for a certain Western audience, and it has a great rating. I know that matters to all the kids on like Mal, or like the other one, like the anime list websites. Like it has like an 8 something, so it's like very highly rated, and the other one has like a high 7, 9 or something like that. So
Mhm.
the first one I chose was Noragami, which means stray god, and or it can also mean nameless god, depending on how
Mm.
you write it in kanji. So it's about a Shinto god who doesn't have a name, because he used to be the god of vengeance, like an evil god, actually. That's even how it's described. So he doesn't have a shrine, so he's kind of a homeless god, you could say, a street god. And it's about him, and I'm a romantic, Brandon, so
Yeah.
all the series that I chose have like that kind of, have a little bit of that. Maybe it's not the main plot, but it's a big part of it, because I was even thinking of doing Inuyasha, but I was like,
Yeah.
oh no, that's like a long form sort of discussion, Inuyasha, because it's
It's
so,
deep.
the
Yeah, there's so much
canon
going
is
on. It's
big, right?
huge.
So right,
Yes.
exactly. So but anyways, so he falls in love with this girl who can travel in her astral body, and she can see him, and she sees like she later finds out his sort of like evil, demonic, you could say asuric nature, as a god of what they would call taboo wishes. So if people want like revenge on their enemies, or to anything, he'll grant anything for like one of those old Japanese coins, like a 10 penny piece or whatever. And so, but they have a need for this god, and so they explain it. They kind of explain it in the whole greater like Shinto Buddhist cosmology. Like these gods exist, but then there's the curse to being those gods too. Is that all gods have a divine weapon, and so as an unnamed or a cursed god, he cannot have his own weapon. He's not allowed to have like a divine weapon that's solely his. So he actually has to have a taboo or transgressive or even antinomian weapon, which is called a nameless weapon. So it's actually it's a ghost or a person, can be both, that goes between different gods when they have to use a divine implement to do an unclean act. So it really goes deep into the Shinto idea of cleanliness and metaphysics, and how like there are ways to get around certain, you could say, karmic rules.
Yeah.
But it's a really great series. You see parts of heaven, you see like the supposed gods, like um gods of war, you see like these heavenly gods, and you actually come to find out that heaven is largely corrupt. Heaven
Mm.
is like not this like imperial, perfection that is kind of like seen from the human world. And actually
Interesting.
it's his Sato, that's his name in the show. Sato's relationship with not only his love interest but also his weapon. He actually gains a weapon, and so it's part of him gaining a shrine. And so
That's
the whole thing is, once he gains a shrine, he actually gains a little piece of heaven. That's even how it's shown. It's like they demarcate like a little. He gets like a little 10 by 10 square foot whatever plot of heaven. So it's all about his apotheosis. So I think as a magician, it's just an interesting series for that reason. It's magical, it's sword fighting, martial arts, a lot of martial arts,
Mm.
lot of kendo, like samurai bushido references, and it's
Nice.
it's all magic. It's all like Shinto magic, real names of gods. He interacts with different like there's like the seven lucky gods. That's like a grouping. He'll interact with those. Then he'll interact with like some Taoist gods of like scholarship or whatever. I mean, it's like it really runs the whole gamut of like a lot of Japanese cosmological ideas. So I really love that one.
That's great. Okay,
Uh,
before you move on, I want to hear.
okay, I
So give me your.
apologize, sir. Yeah.
No, this is beautiful. I'm going to stop you only because I want you to give me your knowledge, Jin. Give me your knowledge. Tell the people what Shinto means from your perspective.
Shinto is, I would say, a ritual. I know this is going to see, you're asking me these questions, Brandon, and you know that I'm sort of a divisive polemicist, will say,
and
on
and that's
Twitter.
okay because I'm a very hierophantic structuralist sometimes, and so I will
Okay.
correct you if I find you're veering off the path.
Okay. 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 Well, this is just my personal appraisal. This is no one, this is not, I'm not taking it strictly from a textbook or like
Yeah.
anything like that. But I think it's a ritual methodology of looking at the world as having anima or animus or both in objects and also living things. Sort of like a sentience, maybe Buddha nature,
Yeah.
maybe you could call it. Not quite, maybe like a proto dharma. I would even actually describe Shinto as kind of like a proto dharma. It's very, very, very much concerned with ideas of ritual purity, cleanliness, very, very, very much. If you read the Nihon Shoki, which is one of the first Japanese texts about what is called Shinto today. So Shinto also took a turn into emperor worship and like sort of like the divine house worship of the king and his whole lineage, and tied to like the ancestral. Well, they had, the rumor is that they're the ancestors of the sun goddess Amaterasu, but
Yeah.
Amaterasu is also a form of Guanyin or Kanon. So there's a huge interrelationship. People make a big mistake in completely separating like Shinto and Buddhist ideas.
Mm-hmm.
They were proliferating much at the same time. A
Mm.
lot. I've done multiple episodes on. People can check them out with a big account on Twitter who's named Jigoku Keiki. He's a great guy. He studies Japanese esoteric Buddhism. So
Oh,
so we did have done multiple episodes, about 4 episodes, I believe, on my feed. People can check those out. But but it's a lot of it is intermixed. And then there's also Taoism. So then you have like this what's becomes Onmyodo. So Onmyodo is kind of like a fusion syncretic magical system where it is parts Taoist, parts Shinto, parts a Buddhist, and it is kind of shamanic in a way, or magical, at least magical. And the sort of main saint, because my show is called Threshold Saints, the main saint of Onmyodo or Shinto, one of them at least, is the Abe no Seme. So
hmm.
this is a very famous kind of Shinto figure who is like a Moses or a Solomon or a Elijah, kind of like not a prophet, but a magician, like a real magician. And they're not in the huckster sort of like plug-in magical sword way, like a real magician. Like his mother was said to be a fox fairy, his dakini or his companion was said to be a butterfly goddess. I mean, like a kind of a person whose life was so lived steeped in that kind of magical nature, or the nature of like reality, like like whatever reality really is, but that kind of like um ephemeral nature of reality, that he became like mythological, even though he was actually like a very well documented and historical person. And multiple people from his actual life, court records, actually support him having magical powers, or at least people perceived him to have magical powers. So he's very important in Shinto. And why I just bring him up is because for me, he was the one who really got me interested in this idea of like, what is, is there Japanese magic? Is magic like not a good epistemological category to describe what like exists? Because like, I've met Kaiva and we had a great conversation on like her kind of Buddhism and my kind of
Yeah.
Buddhism. Like there's something deeply esoteric about her kind of Buddhism. Now, does she necessarily sit there and think like I'm doing
No,
magic?
she actually
No.
doesn't. She actually despises that connotation.
Right. And that's a very Buddhist way to look at it, to be honest. That's a very Buddhist way to
Yeah.
look at it. And that is when I first started podcasting. That was also that was something that I have learned to sort of embrace, that I'm just a sorcerer on the carnal ground. Like, yes, I'm a Buddhist. Yes, I follow Dharma. But number one, I'm a sorcerer on the carnal ground. So that's where I
Yeah.
speak from.
Yeah.
I don't speak for Dharma or anyone else. And also, but I would say that fundamentally there is something esoteric about what she does and like her
Oh,
kind of
for sure.
Buddhism. And
Oh my
all
God, yeah.
Mahayana Buddhism is very esoteric. So why I bring this up is just because it's very intermeshed. So I don't want to call Shinto one particular thing, because
Yeah,
it has
I like that.
undergone
makes sense.
many different formations, and it has different iterations. Like you can even see this in Japanese horror cinema, especially. They'll have like stories about like dog god sorcerers in the mountains, some like in Hokkaido or something like northern Japan. And then in Okinawa they have these kind of household shaman gods that are much more like the Korean Mudong, kind of like Muish shamans. So you have like very different traditions within like one archipelago. So I just don't think it's totally fair to call Shinto one thing. It's like Hinduism. I am one of those people that do not like the word Hinduism, because it refers to you're not
So
referring
much.
to anything. You're
Right.
referring to like this whole broad thing that people think it is, but it's not really. And I think Shinto is much the same. I even think I've honestly, Brandon, my sort of realization lately has become maybe even Buddhism is kind of like this as well.
Yeah,
There are
there's so
different
many
kinds of
levels.
Dharma.
Yeah. No, I agree. Go on. I'm just saying I agree with you. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm being a little rambly, but
No, I like that though. And I like that. And it makes
Okay.
sense. And what's so fascinating is that, even to speak for her, which I shouldn't, but I will, is that how I think there's two reasons, because she's been all like, to me, as speaking in front of the chanting in front of the Gohans, and this magical thing that is a glyph for the Lotus Sutra. That Lotus Sutra is how I first related it when I first started doing it with her. Was funny enough, or not, because of the things that I like, is Kung Fu Panda. And why I related it to that was because of when, in this movie, Po is basically destined to be the dragon master, right? Or whatever they call it in that. And the idea is that there's this dragon scroll at the very top of the place, that once you have the ability or the aura or the training and skill in Kung Fu to be able to reach the dragon scroll, then you open it up and it teaches you basically how to become Buddha, right? Or a Bodhisattva, or this high level Kung Fu warrior master. And then, as we all know, if you've seen this, you open it up and then all of a sudden, what do you see in the dragon scroll? You see your own image. And so at first, if you don't have the sight to understand the metaphor, you understand that, oh, this is nonsense. But then he has a realization after he goes through the last part of the dark night of the soul. And that realization is that this is actually the answer the whole time, because the bad guy character shows up and also looks at it and is pissed off, and he starts destroying everything with power. And that power is an over exasperation of his own ego. And so the only reason I bring, and then Po finishes all off by doing the skadoosh, and he wins out because he understands that we're all the dragon master. We all have the dragon scroll, and that dragon scroll is of our own heart. And that's the idea of, like, when you're chanting into the Gohanzen, it's this magical scroll that has a magical glyph on it, that when you chant the Minyoho, the Nimyoho, is that you're, and I'm such a novice at this. I've just started with her, but that is magical ritual.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the part of her disdain for calling her a magician, even though she's a traditional astrologer, So obviously that's integrated into the whole
She's
thing,
practicing wisdom science.
and that's exactly what it is.
She knows that she is. I
And
know.
she
I
knows
know.
it, yeah.
Trust me, I'm very similar. We kind of acknowledged this when I was on the episode. She was like, "Oh, you're
Yeah.
very similar to me," and I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I am." And so, I mean, you're totally right. Is like fundamentally all Mahayana, all Tantra, all like esoteric Buddhism, no matter what country it's from, no matter like if it exists anymore or like died out in the 1800s, it is
Mhm.
all magic. I mean, that's fundamentally what it is. It's about like what is the primordial word. Obviously, we have different ways to sort of like describe that. I like to use emptiness language. Emptiness doesn't mean nothing. Emptiness for me means luminous and masslessness, sort of like
Yeah,
a
of course.
clarity, kind of like
Well,
I
that's
call
a
it diamond thunder.
Yeah, that's the
So-
difference between the Western nonsensical materialism to actual Eastern mysticism.
So we kind of let the word self arise. That's the part of the idea too. So like you can use a deity, like we often use deities. I like deities. Deities have a complex sort of symbolic meaning. Like people are familiar with like Tibetan mandalas. That's very similar to what she does, but she's like they're kind of using emptiness doctrine, which is part of the Lotus Sutra, a big part of the Lotus Sutra actually. Emptiness doctrine, this kind of luminous masslessness, but like you don't need all the elaboration. So they're kind of like taking it away and they're saying, okay, the word will arise here. Tibetan Buddhism likes people who are a little crazier, maybe you could say. And so they have more elaborate mandala sort of formations, and like it's much more akin to Kabbalah or ceremonial magic. Very similar in many ways. But the point is to still get to the same sort of place. Sort of the same kind of like if that's like
Buddha,
the school
right?
you follow.
Yeah.
Well, you're supposed to write the recognition of the Buddha nature and the primordial Dharma Dhatu, the primordial space of all reality, which is emptiness, which is bodhicitta, loving kindness, and, discriminating awareness and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Diamond thunder, fifth consciousness, and then sometimes in Tantra you go to sixth consciousness. So it's kind of like you'll like this, Brennan. It's Tiferet to Yesod. It's that constant dialectical relationship.
Right. That makes complete sense, because if we're just working with nervous systems, we're trying to work with models of reality, and that and those are just different ways of viewing the many realms of existence, right?
Right. And so there's Tantra tends to be a little more non-dual, even though obviously Lotus Sutra is a perfection of Wisdom Sutra, meaning that all perfection of Wisdom Sutras are where Tantra comes from. People have a big especially on Twitter, they love to I've been a good boy this year, but this is something I was infamous for a long time. Was a lot of people would say, well, where's the origin of Tantra? Can't be Buddhism, it has to be Hinduism. Well, Hinduism didn't exist till Adi Shankara, 10th century, so go cry harder, because wasn't even a thing. But Tantra actually comes from the Pranaparamita Sutras, actually from the texts themselves.
Yes.
And so the Heart Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, the Diamond Sutra, these are all texts that are then used to derive what are called Dharanis. Dharanis are like magical formulations. So there's complex Sanskrit, sort of calculus, mathematical. You can use, like, I'm not a math cell. Some people are very good at math and they can sort of like transliterate the Sanskrit letters into numbers and do these complex formulas just like Kabbalah. Or if you're good at language, this is where I'm stronger. So you can sort of derive mantras if you understand like how to count properly in the Sanskrit words. And it's a complicated process. I'm not saying I can do it. I'm saying I understand. Like, I understand how they derive those ideas. So what I'm saying is that even though Tantra sounds like extremely antinomian or transgressive, I'm talking about Buddhist Tantra, obviously, but Buddhist Tantra directly comes from Pranaparamita texts, directly. Like the derivation of mantras, like all the magic,
and
like
what
the
year
elaboration. Sorry, so I apologize, Brandon. So this is like the 1st till 3rd century. Things are being sort of like transmitted orally as a secret, they would say, as a secret teaching. But you start to see the appearances of Dharanis. So Dharanis are specifically the spell texts that come out of obviously the Pranaparamita Sutras. So, and then in the 5th century, you have a compilation published called the Sadhanamala. So the Sadhanamala is really the earliest example of Tantra, not because it's the earliest compilation, but because it includes the formulation of how to derive the Dharanis themselves from the Perfection of Wisdom texts.
Mm.
And then you also have some of the texts well predate the compilation itself. So you have like first and third century Duranis in the compilation that are saying like this is like a thing that it's been saying since this person. So it's kind of like it's very much like the
Right.
Gospels in a
Yes.
way.
It definitely is. Yeah, especially because in the beginning of the Old Testament, you get fucking thousands and thousands of years of just straight up lineage and name.
Mhm.
But for me the differentiation is it's like when you're going through lineage and name, like they're all talking about different levels of Buddha that have
Mhm.
instead of it's so hard for me to imagine those Old Testament names as being in Buddhahood. And so it feels, and I don't know if that's my own distaste for Old Testament scripture, which I definitely have, especially because all those old tribes were definitely warring tribes. And when we're speaking of the thousands of years and the many names of the beginning of, say, the Lotus Sutra, or what you're talking about, is those don't seem to be warlord tribal gods that we're talking about, right? And so that's kind of a strange. It's like such an interesting differentiation between the two cultures and what is valued in those types of things, don't you think?
Well, look, Brandon, I am notorious for this opinion, but I don't care what happens in the contemporary or historical Middle East. I'm a Hapaborean. I'm a New
Yeah,
Worldist.
yeah.
I think what happens here in our perception on the New World Island, aka the Turtle's Back, aka North America, aka America, that is what it's important, and that's what we can control. And everything
Yeah.
starts with our own Malkuth, our own kingdom, and what our sphere of influence is. So for
Yeah.
me, that's what I'm really interested in now in
No,
terms
I
of
love that.
historical perspectives. Look, I'm an axialist. People can understand that however they want. You go read Carl Jaspers. He talks about Buddhism as axial age religion,
Yeah, he
Dharma,
does. Yeah.
right?
Carl
Because
Jasper
and
is the
how
man.
yeah, he is. And
Yeah.
so it's the wheel turning and just exactly like how Buddhism says it is. And so we're turning, and that's sort of the aeon. And they even actually the Kelpa to aeon, so using the Sanskrit word Kelpa and then putting it, say, in an aeonic or calling it an aeon, excuse me, in Greek. This is actually a 1,000-year-old tradition from Sanskrit to Greek. So this is not, I'm not even drawing on anything new when I'm calling something the aeon of the daughter. And so that's part of what the Aeon of the Daughter is. I've tried to keep it as much as I can, as dharmic as possible, and like sort of it's not that I'm a Thomisite or anything like that, but I'm deeply inspired by a lot of Gnostic literature. And by Gnostic, I'm talking about small g,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But to respond to, I have to respond to this one point, Brandon, that you said. And so you're
Please.
talking about like the gods of the Old Testament or the
Mhm.
God. So I think Peter Gray actually did a great job in his Lucifer Praxis book about sort of
Yeah.
like differentiating, like, yeah, there was a complex of Northwest and Southwest Semitic gods and Canaanite gods and all these, like all that stuff. And they were all mixing together too. And so but they all had mountains, specific mountains. So this from a Buddhist framework, well, I'll finish that thought. I apologize. So they all had mountains associated with them that were sites of their cultic worship. So from a Buddhist perspective, a tantric Buddhist perspective, from a Central Asianist perspective, this is actually very interesting because we would say the primordial site of worship for God, capital G, is mountain grandfather worship. Now, you could say this
Oh,
is kind of like a Shiva thing or a Rudra thing or even an Indra thing, but actually Buddhism rejects the Vedas. I know that this upsets a lot of people that I say this, that even that I speak the words that this is true. This is true of Tantra. People can understand Buddhism however they want. I've learned I cannot control anyone's perceptions, opinions. I can only control what I say. But in Tantra, we defeat the Vedic gods because we defeat our own aggregates. And that's what the Vedic gods usually represent. There are multiple layers of meaning, just like in Kabbalah. You can say there are 5 layers of meaning, just like the Pardes system will say that. Inner, outer, secret. So when you see gods depicted in like under the feet of tantric deities, usually that has a meaning that this god has been defeated because the god is representative, kind of like a demiurge kind of thing. That's very similar to how it is. So what I'm trying to say is there's a Gnostic cosmology in Buddhism, but even tantric Buddhism is not a singular cosmology because tantra is really ontology. So that's why the gods also get defeated because you're actually defeating cosmology through telling yourself that you have Buddha nature. Like you are actually liberating yourself from the confines of the, you could say, archonic control, just by looking at the image of like the Buddha dancing on a corpse.
Yeah.
So that's one idea. So I just wanted to respond to that. I apologize. I was kind of meandering, but I think that there was a point there. And yeah. And so, you know, Buddhism is a very magical religion. And I think that it's hard sometimes to specifically say, oh, it's not magic, because there's a clear part, like especially for me, I'm not talking about Kaiva Rose or like you know, Mahayana esoteric Japanese Buddhism, and not that she doesn't consider it esoteric, but I kind of would. But anyways, the point is that there is a point where it is sorcery. Like that's clearly sorcery. It's clearly called sorcery in the text. It's clearly understood as that. It's clearly has multiple aims, maybe worldly, maybe other, maybe dharmic, maybe karmic, who knows. And so there's like layers of like things, but you do the rituals, really, Brandon, is the truth, is you do the rituals. So it's like almost theurgic, but I've tried not to use that language because we don't believe, as I'm saying, Tantra conquers the cosmology, conquers the gods. So we don't, it's not necessarily the same thing to have a theurgic experience. But that is a way I have described it in the past. But you can definitely say it's a dialogical relationship. So the deity exists. So I've said, like, I've been more severe in my articulation of this before, where I say, oh, the, you know, the deity, it's kind of empty. It's like, it's not real, but it's real and not real, is how I always say. But the deity also exists. So it's important, I think, for people to like hear me say that, because they think I'm very like harsh on this. Like, no, I know I can't control what other people think. I'm just telling you what I think. So in my understanding of Dharma, the deities are empty, but they also have complex symbolic meanings. And those symbolic complex meanings can help you understand your own mind. So that's where I come at it from. I'm not so worried about whose connection, like who is Rudra. I already understand all that. Like I understand the Puranas. I understand the Puranic relationship. People think the Puranas are some village. I heard this on Twitter. People talking about the Puranas are like the village understanding. No, the Puranas are the narrative vehicle for tantric sort of cosmology of the world. The Puranas explain like what the current, if you want to count it as like turnings of the wheel, the Puranas describe the second turning of the wheel. So you have to understand the Puranas in their turn, right? Just like you have to understand the Tantras in their chronological order. And then like saying, what if they're saying, okay, we're the Tantra of the fourth turning. Okay, so you're going to say this is more updated for our current yuga or aeon, which I guess cycles us back to the whole point. Is that there is a relationship between Gnosticism and Buddhism, but Buddhism does not go to extremes. It says that we are Samsara and Nirvana at the same time. It's right here, right now. And we're trying to be like I'm trying to be, it's not that I'm trying to be a good boy. I'm not trying to be a good boy, to be honest. I've like struggled with this in terms of not in terms of like how you tease me sometimes, or like even like being left-hand path or anything like that. But I think I've come to terms like where like I'm never going to be the standard hero, something that you talk about a lot, the hero's journey. And what is a hero in the Aeon of the Daughter? And so I have posited before that the Aeon of the Daughter's sort of Sethian archetype, you could say, not Temple of Set, but Sethian as in the Gnostic Seth.
Because there's three sons.
Exactly. And so he is an anti-hero or a magician or both. So that's how best I can embody it. Yes, that is a trickster sometimes, but it's not a malicious person. It's like I'm trying to become. You had another guest who I'm forgetting. I'm sorry, I apologize, Brandon. But you had another guest who talked about becoming. That is what I'm trying to do too. So whomever that is, like the higher self, that's what I would like to also experience. And so I realized like Buddhism is also magic, and there's no running away from it too. So that's what that's sort of the whole point of what I think I was even trying to get at. There's something so fundamentally like meta reality. Like when you're in Dharma, when you practice Dharma, you realize that reality is both malleable and it's also real and not real. Like it's sort of ephemeral.
Yeah, no, and this is I'm going to answer why it's hard to label down those those contrasting, they seem contradictory terms. And why I think that, and then I'm going to label it into how that relates to anime, because it 100% does, is we are stuck within Aristotelian language, right? And so something always has to reflect something else. This is that. And the idea of us back in the early Enlightenment period with Cartesianism breaking down language into a subject-object dialectic. And so it's hard for us to use language to speak about language itself sometimes. And so why we are like, magic is both real and not real all at the same time, because it seems like the not real part is all of the psychosomatic, psychological parts of magic. And then the real part of it is that there are actually entities and beings all around us at all times, and that there are spiritual forces moving along the lines of planetary forces that impress their, our destinies upon ourselves, that we are then to be as magicians and mystics to stand up and try to control these forces of nature, both internally and externally. And then that is the true embodiment of Tai Chi, right? That's the idea of being able to take these two opposing forces and interpenetrate them at the same time as balancing them out. And that's that idea of bringing Tai Chi back into the Wuji state. And so it's such a fascinating ability to then take both the East and the Western style philosophies and see where the problematic happenstance happened when we had to break language apart and try to like objectify things and subjectify things. When going back to the original statement of what is Shintoism, is that Shintoism is another religion that is exactly what you said, Jin. It interpenetrates through a syncretic way with Buddhism and Taoism and all of these different religions of the East, but at the same time, its basis underpinnings of like an animistic state of interpenetrating magic at all times. All things are alive and living, right? Even inanimate things have life or sentience in them, or some form of sentience in them. Does that make sense, Jin?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting that the longer objects, handmade, so it's specifically started as an idea for handmade objects.
Yeah.
So objects that are crafted, you could
like
say as a
like totems.
Exactly, as a hermeneutic. So the like act of craft working. So like I'm not the nicest to the pagans for sure. Like I'm probably the meanest Buddhist on Twitter in terms of like the pagan community. But there is something
I'm doing pretty good myself. Hey,
I know you are. So that's why I brought it up. So but to give one to the Vokes, we'll say, okay.
Yeah.
The idea of crafting something for yourself that has ritual power, right? So like this is a very like I'm not I was never like into this kind of magic where you like go like get a wand and all that shit and that stuff and like no. But like I'm not mad at anyone who does. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like what I was interested in. So,
and side note, those are all mnemonics anyway. I don't care what anybody says. Those are things you're supposed to be able to do within your own astral temple of the mind.
Okay? I totally agree with you. I mean, we're obviously that's the important. That's my opinion is the important layer of Tantra. So it's in the mind palace. So I totally agree with you. But yeah, so the idea is things that are crafted by people for people with other people's emotions. So this is another big piece of Shintoism is like this idea of like what carries forth that spark of sentience. Now, because Shintoism is very preoccupied with the idea of ritual purity, cleanliness, the idea of running clear, free, like water or a waterfall, which is often the metaphor, or if you go to a Shinto shrine, you will see the offering, they'll have like the water for washing your hands. So that's the idea, very Kabbalah-like. Very like looking at a pristine like block of ice or like the clear like reflection of the lake or the clear reflection of water in the sky. So the negative emotions, we won't call them bad, we'll call them negative. We'll use more Taoist language. They can carry forward sentience in the same way that positive benefic intentions can also carry forward sentience. So I would say that the idea of inanimate objects having like a kind of spark or a soul or a spirit, at least if you want to call it. I prefer to use probably spirit for myself, but anything anyone wants or Brandon wants to do, that's fine. But they have to be crafted by human hands and they have to also be sort of passed down. So the older an object is or was, the stronger the spark becomes. This is a very like an important idea in like Shinto magic, as well as like Shinto sort of like gods and demons lists. So even spirits can actually become a god. And so you're going to ask me, well, I won't say what you're going to ask me, but I'll say in my mind, you're asking me, Brandon, like what differentiates spirit from a god? Well, I think this is actually really interesting.
Yep.
Worship, veneration. So to enshrine a spirit into a actual physical shrine, as in origami, to bring it back to anime, which I know we haven't spoken about in like 20 minutes, but I promise this really did all have a point.
It does.
Right? Because these are all ideas that are being explored in origami. Is the idea of like, what does it mean to be a shrineless god? What does it mean to be a god without a name? Like, do gods have to have a name? What is the nature of a god? What is the nature of a spirit? Maybe a spirit, as the series posits, is just the manifestation of the enmity, meaning like the negative intention, the negative will of all these people making evil wishes. I'm not calling evil as in like people don't make evil wishes or anything like that. But like for every polarity, there has to be a positive and negative charge, right? There's an inherent dualism in Shintoism that I think that would make a Buddhist not uncomfortable, but I think that it would. I think that Buddhists could reconcile it by saying like, this is part of human nature. There's the idea of the polarities, and like people are going to pray to who they're going to pray to, whether they pray to a supposedly quote unquote good God for a good reason or a good God for an evil reason. Many people do this. We know so many people that, you can call angels for things to harm people. I mean, you've been in the magical community long enough. You know that people do stupid things like that.
Oh yeah. And I try to call them out every time I hear it.
So the reality is like, I just think that it's better to rely on yourself, your mind, your cultivation, your inner cultivation, your practice of mind palace and mandala techniques, or a recitation of the word and Kabbalah and mystical study. So that's just my preference. So, but the series actually agrees with me more and tends towards a non-theistic point of view, which I kind of like. It's not that gods aren't real. Gods are very real, and it shows the qualities of the different gods, and it shows even the Buddha. The Buddha exists in heaven. He's like the celestial king or whatever, but he doesn't really do anything. They just kind of like act in a way, and you would say that, okay, they're acting in accordance with karma, because the gods can die and be reborn. And I also like that about the series, is I think it teaches you something about the metaphysics of heaven, that gods can die. Yes, that's a big part of the series, is that gods can die and they can be killed and they can be reborn, and people can steal their divine weapons. They can steal their divine offices. They can even steal their names. It's a big part of the series too, is the power of naming. Naming your own weapon, naming yourself, having like I said, like the gods having a specific name. And sometimes the gods have multiple names. And sometimes that actually results, and this is actually interesting that they even discuss this in the series, it's very meta, but they talk about how the multiple names of a deity can result in them actually having like, they can take multiple forms. So that form can actually arise as its own deity eventually. What started out as a sub form of a specific big
creates
deity.
its own egregore.
Yes, basically. And like you see the gods as being very limited in their perceptions, limited in their offices even, and limited in their powers. They cannot go outside the confines of like the order of greater heaven. That is a big part of the series, is like he is the rebel god. He is the only one who is able to sort of like defeat the archonic forces that are actually at work, and there's an evil conspiracy actually taking place in heaven. And that is the whole idea, is that he is kind of a Luciferic figure. He absolutely is. He has a tail. He has a blue blazing sword. Like, it's very Luciferic.
And Luciferic is in the mythopoetic John Milton kind of sense, not the pussyfooters out there.
Well, I am a little Luciferic. I would say
Yeah.
Buddhism is pretty
Well, me
Luciferic,
too.
Brandon.
But
I
what I
know.
mean
Well,
is
magic is.
The Peter Gray style Luciferic, like not the I'm a Luciferian, I'm a right wing conspiracy person who's pushing that all masonry is Luciferian and evil in this whole
Right, right. I'm
conjunction
very
of
against
Satanism.
that. I think we even
Yeah.
talked about this and just like
Yes.
I think that's very damaging, and I think that
Yes.
actually really damages whatever the occult public is. I won't even call them a community, but the occult public or whomever is listening to this. When people are doing that, that is negative. That's
Yeah.
very negative. They are creating klipas, as I would call it. That's like my language, and like I obviously just recorded with David Hyman Smith, and obviously I'm really proud of that episode because I consider myself like a pretty good Kabbalist for my age. And I just feel like that is the creation of klipas, is when they like obscurant things that obscure people's understanding of the truth, even
It's
if they
awful.
can't see the full truth.
Yeah,
Just the idea that magic is evil, magic is bad, because things, as I was trying to say with Noragami, although I didn't really get there, things arise in your perception. So if you
that's
believe things are
there you go.
evil,
There you go.
evil is going to rise. If you believe magic is evil, all magic will be evil.
Yeah, that's nailed it. I'm going to clip that. I'm going to spread that over the entire net because that's exactly it. And that's something I'm continually trying to, and that's why I like anime so much. And not all anime, there's so much trash out there, but there's the specific ones that we're covering in this fine evening. And something quickly that everyone needs to know is why the hermetic the hermetic tradition or being a hermeticist is so important, or however you want to translate that into any different culture. But it's to fine tune the nervous system, train the will, calm the mind, and boom and grow your imaginatory faculties. Because once we understand, and it's a very important understanding, in that I never am perceiving things the way they are. I'm only ever perceiving things through my own intentionality towards the perceived object. And I'm only actually ever perceiving the perceived object. And so there are many different levels and filters that finally reach the thing that I'm trying to understand. And it's in between that where we start to get this crazy misunderstanding about what plane levels of concrete reality even are, because we can never truly understand that. So if you think, again, as you just said, that all magic is evil, because if you have a literal understanding through some kind of blasphemic heretic of the Pope who disliked something about what he didn't understand about reality, and then we forget that the way that some of these scripts, like the Bible, which is a grimoire in and of itself, have been translated through the years, and things have been tossed out and put back in and translated from this and that. It's that exact thing is how important it is that it's like your perception changes the thing that you're perceiving, and because it's changing the way you think about things. And so that's my long-winded just little further that explanation, because I think it's just so important.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's, Hesed governs all our interactions with reality,
Yeah.
right? Our perception. That's what Brandon's saying. I'm using, and Brandon understands when I use this language, but I understand for his audience, he doesn't use this language, but I do. And that's just the difference of our shows, but that's okay because I know Brandon gets it. But like, yeah, Hesed, and Hesed should govern, right? Loving kindness should govern our interactions with all things in this like multiverse, this weird reality, this meta reality that we all exist within. It should. Bodhicitta should, but it doesn't necessarily.
Yeah.
So you have to have also the discerning fire of Gevra, and that's a big part of this discussion, is like you have to be able to discern when people are saying like something is evil. It's not all good. It's not all like roses and like rainbows or whatever, but it is, the reality is like very non-dual, and it's a lot more gray than it is black and white binary. And even though we joked about the polarities a little before, it is important to recognize that the polarities sort of like are entwined in infinitude. So we have karma, and like you have to kind of navigate yourself in a way to like make sure that you're aware of these things, and like be aware of people's Buddha nature. And you may dislike them. I dislike a lot of people.
Oh
I
yeah,
am
me
not
too.
perfect
Me
person
too.
at all.
Me too. Yeah.
You know, and like magicians are like the most polarizing of all because we have the polarities like sparking inside of us at all times at like 3,300,000%. So it is really hard. You have to really try and contain like all of these impulses, ideas, the chaos and order all at the same time. I still know we saw have Eros in the chat, and like her and I often discuss this idea of the relationship, especially in Kabbalah, like of Zimzum, of like the contraction and expansion, the sort of way that you need to have, you need to be able to dance to allow the chaos to sort of fill the expanse of space, but you can't have it expand so much where it becomes entropy or you lose
Mm-hmm.
sight of the contour of the truth.
Yeah.
That's why I prefer to follow the middle pillar. But I personally do draw a lot from left-hand path ideas more than I draw from right-hand path ideas. Why? Because I think that we have fallen back into a kind of ideological klipa, a tree of death, a klifa, that we have allowed ourselves to be put in. And I think a lot of these influencers, I'm not talking about obviously you, Brandon, or anyone associated with us or our like sphere,
Yeah.
but a lot of these people would like you to believe that reality is fixed, that reality is not governed by, at least partially, by your own mind, and that God is either yourself, who you think you are, or that God is some fairy in the sky. And I'm not saying that there isn't a kind of a middle way to understand both of those things as true in a way. But I don't think either of those things are the full truth. And I think that there's actually deeper and more profound and significant understandings that the internet, to bring that all the way back to Anne of the Daughter, that I think that allows us, this is what I started podcasting for, what my project was to meet people like yourself, Brandon, like Kyva Rose, like my co-host Solar, like Matt Murrah, like Joshua the Branch, like Eros, like Vanessa, like Cassandra, like all of the people in the Grey Lodge, like all the people that we interact with and like are part of our regular crew, and Nick and all the rejects and all the people I've met through that show. You know, and all of these metaphysical publishers that like you and I have interviewed, and like all these like hundreds and maybe thousands of hours of work. The whole point was to sort of like, not to hear myself speak, but to sort of meet other people and recognize them as, I like to call it, the Zodakim. My show is Threshold Saints, so that makes sense, right? Rebbe Nachman. But that is Buddha nature, I think. David Heim Smith also agrees that that is a Buddha nature idea, that you're recognizing in someone else like the potential for bodhicitta, the potential for goodness, and not just goodness. I'm not talking about like binary good and evil.
No,
talking about more primordial, like not like non-dual love. And so I like to think that a magician is attuned, because of our sparks, you could say we have so many sparks coming out from us. We're attuned to the splendors of the world. And sometimes I personally believe this, is that you can recognize people in the world, even, and maybe even particularly on the internet sometimes. I think people are bad and like will use their own narratives and like ends to get what they want. But I think sometimes people are not attracted to each other. I mean, like people come together in your orbit, because that is actually significant. That is the nexus. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Brandon.
No, I love that. That's beautiful. And it's so true. And I think that's something that why it's so important to understand even simple questions like what we're talking about, what brought us in. And one of our first, conversations together was about anime and about storytelling. It's about good storytelling. And one of the things you learn out of all these stories is how important it is to have this community around you. And sometimes it's really hard to find that while you're in a small town or, in the middle of an apartment in a big city or on the farm or wherever you're at. But then again, through these, like you call nexuses, or through what we learn with like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, for instance, it's like none of these things truly matter unless you have a community around you. which is then why I think each one of us that does kind of come together and we start to realize, hey, I have a friend in you. I've never even met you, but there's some kind of thing that I can hear in your voice that has this level of harmony, and that maybe you are a fellow initiate and or invisible, or a warrior priest, a warrior philosopher, and that we, that divine spark.
I hate that kid, Brandon. Don't ever quote warrior philosopher to me. I'm just kidding.
I don't know who
I'm
that
just
is,
kidding.
but
I'm not trying to start beef. I'm just kidding. I had to say something.
Oh, it's hilarious. Is that a person?
Yeah, that's a fellow YouTuber.
Oh, nice.
He's a short Filipino hapa. We have
that's
beef.
funny.
I'm a tall Chinese hapa, obviously.
That's
6'1".
hilarious.
He's 5'6". So
yeah,
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'd grind him into dust.
Well, I'm taller than both of you, so that's neither here nor there. But but my point is,
you can't compete with your white boy magic, Brandon.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so you can't actually. Hey, the reason is because I got a good mixture. Most of it's white boy, but the rest of it's Peruvian Incan. So I got that old blood. So you better watch yourself.
I hear you.
But the idea is like through like why Full Metal hits so hard, and I think that's peak. I think Full Metal Alchemist is peak anime that can teach you magic, obviously for the initial reason that it's about alchemy, right? But then, and also that they're tapping into the dragon lines, or the ley lines of the earth, as well as then being able to tap into truth, which is what the boys, as well as anyone else who becomes a sacrifice later in that, is able to do, which is why they are able to clap and formulate a transmutation circle with their body, thus being able to perform alchemy, or the laws of equivalent exchange and transmutation. And so by
that's
the end
most important. Sorry, Brandon, but I want to just emphasize that the law of equivalent exchange, that is the fundamental of all magic.
Yes.
Every single thing in magic can be reduced down to that simple axiom that is taught in that anime.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Even the idea of the circle. Sorry, I'll let you explain your anime. I want to say that is a really important idea.
And I think that's really important that everyone understands, as well as I've done a Full Metal Alchemist manga review. Everyone should go watch it. But the idea is how important the laws of equivalent exchange are, that something cannot be gained for something not sacrificed in return. And so that is the law that everyone lives off of. And so why I get so pissed off at this witch talk, new agey, nonsensical, why I diss on the Thelemites, why I diss on the OTO and all these nonsensical chaos magicians, is because for that exact reason, is this misappropriation, and maybe that's not the right word, but the misunderstanding of that exact law. And all these renobs are pulling spells on people, and I just don't think that's, and I know that may be something you and I spar on, but there's levels of karma that we people have forgotten that what you do against somebody else will come double back on you. And that's then how these things happen in the anime, is that these things rebound when something isn't given in return, and yet something is taken, just like Ed and Al's legs, when they didn't mean for it to happen upon trying to bring their mother back to life. What are you going to say?
I agree, Brandon, that there is a certain, I would not call what happens in the series karmic per se. I think karma is a very complicated topic. I have a hard time
I wouldn't say karmic
myself. But I do think, because your mind creates karma just by sitting here talking to you. We are creating our karma to have another conversation in another lifetime and another. No, we are.
Yeah,
that's the real truth of dharma. We are creating the conditions for us to have a conversation in the future in another lifetime. We might not ever remember. We'll never remember this. We won't remember Jin. We won't remember. You won't. Nothing. We'll have this conversation at another time. Maybe not even this exact thing. Maybe we'll smoke cigarettes. I don't even smoke cigarettes.
I don't either. Yeah.
Who knows, right? I know you're a healthy person. I'm just saying, it's just, we are creating condition. We are creating karma just by simply existing.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
It's a complicated thing. I personally like chaos magic. I think it can free people conceptually to a degree. I do not think it's perfect. I do not think to be a useful dimensional edgelord is. I think I try and live. I would like to live I don't tell people how to live. I cannot control what other people do. If other people want to use magic against someone, um, that's their will, I guess. I would like to live aeonically personally. So for me, the aeonic qualities are Nuria, love, Zoe, life, and Seth, which is will. I like to live in synthesis. That is a very Platonic, right? Idea,
Yeah.
Pythagorean,
Yeah.
Pythagoras, anyway. But I like that idea, and I think that that makes a lot of sense. A single pointed will, as we would say in Buddhism. So for me, I try and live by that code. You could say that's my Bushido, but that is just Dharma, right? That is just Dharma. Bodhicitta as love. Um,
But I will say this,
Samsara.
Jin, and this is something that I find, and I'm going to interrupt you only because
No, that's okay.
why I dislike the chaos magic bit, and I don't think you and I are talking about the same thing completely when I use this term, is that it most of the time doesn't start with two basic foundations. And this is something I talked about with Mark Stavish, and something that is laid out specifically, and you get to see the consequences in these beautiful anime that we're talking about, is ethics and morality. And so without those two deeply integrating into your entire system, I don't think there's a way for transformation to happen, because the practice itself isn't going to do it for you. It's your understanding the practice with the world.
Well, I agree with you. Obviously, that bodhicitta is number one. Look, I follow Rime teachings. I can't tell anyone else what to follow. I'm not telling
Right.
anyone to follow a
Right.
particular lama
No.
or school or idea or anything. I'm talking about Jumi Rinpoche. I'm directly citing him. He says that bodhicitta is number one, axial, pivotal, critical, must.
Yeah.
So I believe that the generation of Bodhi, but the generation of bodhicitta can take many forms, and Tantra can also be very wrathful. So sometimes people have to transmute other feelings before bodhicitta can really arise. That is a real thing. So I
Yeah.
recognize that. So
Yeah.
I don't want to, I cannot condemn someone else or their Buddha nature
No, that's
for,
true.
you know, their klipas or whatever their blockages or dharmic, you know, patterns like manifest in this life. I cannot say anything. I am just saying for me, Jin, I care about bodhicitta, so I try and follow that. Now, I also understand bodhicitta in a wrathful way. I'm not gonna lie. So for me, chaos magic or people doing new age shit, like I don't agree with that. I don't agree with like, but I honestly just control me.
Yeah.
So I don't care about those other people. Like they can do what they want, but like I know when I get up at like now I've been getting up at 5 every day. I usually always have gotten up really early, but because I have like you as you know I live on a farm and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've always gone up early, but now I've been trying to be much more motivated to like get in a lot of sadhana. Because you know, like David Heim Smith, he practices like 4 hours a day in the morning alone.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I would like to be a Kabbalist of like that level one day.
Yeah, I agree.
So I would like to practice Buddhism at least 4 hours a day because I cannot commit to doing it 4 hours in the morning like that. But I would like to one day. So for right now, I'm very focused on just my own practice, my own puja, my own mandala practice, and my own deities. I cannot say about anyone else, and
Yeah.
nor do I want to.
Yeah, no, I hear that, and I think that's a good. I think that's a good disclaimer. I'm slightly different, in only because I'm thinking in this way. In this current day and age that we're living in, this age of chaos, so to speak, there seems to be two opposing forces that think never the twain shall meet. And yet it seems like they're going to make this roundabout curve and collide at the very top. And we're going to call it like a capitalistic, like communism. And my problem with it is that both sides of the gun are gunning for people that are more in the center, like a you or I, who, yes, I have my conservative values and I have liberal values, but it seems like that my problem is a lot of this the satanic panic that seems to be looming on the edges of things. And so when I start hearing things like, you know, on the witch talk or the Etsy's or these things where like people are selling spells or they're trying to fucking like spell Trump, you know, and curse him and all these things, this misappropriation occult terms and misunderstanding in a world where the occultists are already the hidden ones or practicing in secret, like we have to in a certain way. It's such a fascinating thing where it's then I feel like part of me is wanting to speak out kind of on my soapbox as the Hierophant, kind of casting my sword upon the land to help a misunderstanding, not calling anyone out, but still having the idea that I want people to understand something that Alkisti said and Peter Gray said when I was interviewing him, is that we have more in common with Christians or the people who worship God than the godless. And so it's a fascinating thing where it's like, if we can all understand that we're on the side of God, it's just, yes, we may worship different or pray different. But then there's this level of nihilistic atheism out there that has, I think, like crawled its way into this like, not community, like you said, but this kind of thing that it starts to become dangerous, and so it's like, if some of us don't kind of be like, hey, don't you think it's kind of ridiculous, you're saying out loud you're trying to spell somebody, don't you understand the kind of witch burnings that go on when people start to be afraid of something they don't understand? You know what I mean?
Look, I think that we all know that narratives are used to control populations. This is an old tool of sociology since British India. That's where sociology was developed. It's like people totally forgot about this whole epistemology of the
Yeah.
of the discipline. It comes out of it's the study of control. It's how to control people, and the best way to control people is through narratives of your mind. Like, the narratives that you believe in is what I'm talking about. You in perception, your mind in perception of things you believe in. People are going reality is so if you tell people three things, reality is magic, your mind is magic, what you believe is up to your will. How are most people gonna react? Most people are gonna run to Etsy and buy the love spell. Most people are gonna run to, that's the truth.
Yeah.
It's the hard truth that I've come to realize. Maybe I'm a cynic, I don't know. But I just try and focus on this life right now and the samsaric existence that we all inhabit. That's all
Yeah.
I can know right now. Other
No,
than and speculation on other people or their ideas or awakening or their unawakening or their sort of like rigidity or flexibility or where they're, you know, of their pathology. I almost don't have room. That's why I love anime, because I think anime can be consumed very much in like a kind of perception
mm,
of if it's good. And I didn't describe the other one I brought up. I guess I should let you finish Full Metal Alchemy Brotherhood, but I want to say, I think the one thing we have is we have each other in the sense of social media, but we also have this ability to have digital media in many forms. And of course, people should buy physical. You don't want corporations to control everything. You want to have a physical copy.
you have to. Yeah.
You have to. Of all your books, of like I have like so many hard drives of all these Dharma books, all these art history books, all these like books on Taoism in China and India, like from
Well, they're
from the
changing
60s.
PDFs now. They're changing them.
Right. Well, there's always been a quality discrepancy with PDFs. Every time you change mediums, whether you're going from like handwritten books to print,
Yeah.
from print to like digital, or just like you can use DVDs, like CD-ROM to DVDs to a Blu-ray and throw in VHS right at the beginning. You actually lost hundreds of thousands of archival films that way. We lost the majority of the films ever made. Just every time we transition to a
Isn't that
new
crazy?
archival medium.
Yeah.
So like the thing is like we do have this opportunity right now to read those amazing Peter Gray Scarlet imprint books.
Oh, please
We're
go out and
very
buy them.
lucky. We are
Everyone
very
should.
lucky in a way that we can take of those things and discern for ourselves what the nature of reality is.
Yeah.
And we don't have to necessarily listen to, I'm not saying to do whatever you want or to do whatever you will. I don't actually believe that. I think we should temper it in bodhicitta and temper it in love. I do believe that.
I knew that would
in the
come
middle
out.
pillar.
Yeah.
But I also
I knew you agreed. I knew you agreed with me.
But I also believe that I knew that taking of your own will is extremely important.
It is.
I think this is one of the most important left-hand path ideas of all.
Yeah,
taking of your own will and
Crowley
knowing what that
left-hand
is.
path. Yeah, you'd consider Crowley.
Well,
in that
I mean, I don't know. I don't really.
You know, when you say do your will, you're invoking Crowley.
I know, but I don't think it's just. I don't think life is all about doing your will. I don't think everyone gets to do what they want. I mean, that's not even reality based. That's not even based in my own reality. Maybe that's based in someone who's extremely agential, extremely like able to do whatever they want, extremely able to like, maybe it's someone who has like more resources than me. And they can like live exactly how they want to live. Like that is a potentiality.
That's different though. That's different. The argument comes into then there's a differentiation between doing your will and doing what you want. Because doing your will is an alignment of the stars. And I had this argument with Kaiva when we first started dating about how she was saying, well, there's nothing else you can do but what the stars are, you know, it's in your chart, your stars, they're very fixed in that way. It doesn't mean you can't learn from it and then continue to carve your path within the framework of astrology, traditional astrology. So I find it really interesting to say that then when you are crawling, or you know, when you're trying to strap up your bootstraps and work a bunch and lift yourself up from the craftsman or the working class into whatever levels, that would still be, as you're doing it, part of your will. But that's a separation from then the want that you need, because part of your will is then the burning off of said karma. As
I like to say desire. I like to say you should differentiate what you desire from what you will.
Yeah, that's a better, because desire is more like want, because will has nothing to do with your desires.
I mean, they can align.
In this framework, I don't think so.
I'm just saying that we have to allow for the infinite possibility. I'm just saying in a dharmic way, we have to allow for the infinite possibility of existence appearance as it appears. It may not be to our particular taste or agreement.
No, I like that.
Like that. That's why we always spar with you on the idea of the chaos magicians.
Yeah.
Simply because I think that this idea of like kind of going away from consensus and conceptual, these kind of like, okay, I'll use a criticism that I have. I know that this will piss you off, but I'll say it anyway. We're friends, so it's okay.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes the Golden Dawn Kabbalah is not how I actually understand Kabbalah. I find it very fixed.
Yeah.
I don't like how the letters stay on certain paths. That's not how traditional Kabbalah sees it. Like I'm talking about Heap Kabbalah. Mm-hmm. And it's not how more transgressive Kabbalah sees it either. And it doesn't allow for the secret paths that actually exist. And how do I know that they exist? Because there is a way to, as you know, Brendan, to experience Kabbalah, experiential Kabbalah, right?
I think that's the only way to do it.
Well, that is the best way.
Yeah.
And so you recognize that in those experiences that actually the tree is very much alive. Mm-hmm. It's very much moving, dynamism, to quote Dr. Stephen Flowers, bringing a little left-hand path, right? And so I think that there's some ideas that are worth breaking, is what I'm trying to say, just in general. So I think those are the klipas that are worth breaking. And I'm not saying this breaking the institution. I know we're like both friends with Ike and like many people in fraternal orders and all of that. Yeah. I'm just saying for me, Jin, I'm not doing that path.
No, I agree. I agree. I'm not either.
So I'm trying to go away from the ruins of those klipas. I'm not saying they're all ruins, but other people can make of them what they want to make of them. I'm going in an aeonic direction. So for me, I just tend to think like your will should be guided by first principle bodhicitta, but then you should be governed by life and your will. So all those things in synthesis come together, then you see what you get, see where you want to climb. That's kind of how I think of reality. I'm very conceptual. I'm very comfortable there. I don't like, I think so I'll just speak from a Buddhist perspective or a Dharma, Tantra perspective, but I'm really talking about from Jin, from me.
Yeah.
when you're doing sadhana as much as I've been doing it, it can make you very fragile in a way. Not fragile psychically or fragile rhetorically or as a person physically or anything, but it does take a certain emotional toll. And so there's a point where your practice begins to sort of blur the lines of reality. And many other magicians have other ways of getting to this place and doing this exact thing. They just use different methodologies. And I'm going through that right now. So what I will say is, like, I am just so preoccupied with the idea of what I can govern, what I can control, what I can move, what karmas I can clear.
Yeah.
I almost do not have room for other people's like perceptual and conceptual misunderstandings.
Yeah, no, that's good. I agree. Yeah, that makes sense. And I also wonder how much, because each one of us has our own, because I feel that same way about myself. And I think it's really important, especially in this day and age of the social justice warrior who's continually trying to go save the world and they don't know how to, like, brush their own teeth and make their own food and
I think you have to
things
save
for themselves.
yourself.
That's the only way you can. And that goes to the other side of the whole QAnon nonsense of, like, somebody up in the fucking White House is going to save you, or somebody in Israel is going to save you, or somebody, some white hat is going to save you. And all of a sudden our government is going to turn into utopian and our whole civilization is going to come together into kumbaya. That's utter fucking nonsense.
It's utter nonsense. It's not pragmatic. It's not
No.
realistic, and it's non-agential. I tend to not like systems that are non-agential. This is actually very important in Dharma, like in the idea of more the perfection of wisdom sutras we were talking about, and the Dharanis. You are very much an agential person. In my opinion, you were right in the conversation with Kyva Rose, is that we can be more fluid in our interactions with the stars and the planets through tantric methodologies. That's even how it's described. So we can move karmas that maybe are more fixed, but nothing is really fixed. It's all kind of malleable to a degree. So I agree with you on that. And I like to think of us as we come more into our will, our fullness, and then we can see maybe with a higher degree of clarity. Maybe we haven't cleared the klipa like entirely, but we are beginning to see like a gradient of like the primordial reality or primordial truth, or even an emergent color. It's not just all black and white. So I like to think of it as, look, I don't know, you take over, Brandon, but I think that reality is very meta. And I think that we are very, can be very conceptual in it. And I think that's the whole point to be alive. That's what I'm trying to say about like sadhana practices, magic. It's to like kind of recognize who we are and where we're at.
Yeah.
In reality and in right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. What's fascinating is that then to get this understanding, I'm going to move us along just in a certain way. That's like so I'm going to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen and why I think that is an anime that can teach you magic.
I did do an episode on it with Monty. I'm just going to tell you.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know who Monty is, but shout
out Monty.
Yeah, nice.
Monty
shout out Monty. Nice.
He's in the Grey Lodge. You can talk to him anytime.
Okay, nice. Have you watched it?
I've seen the first season.
Oh, whatever. Okay. So you don't know anything. So okay. So no, that's a joke. I went a little far.
No, I'm fine with that. I said that on the episode. I said I was very confused as F. I said I did not understand it. I don't know why the characters kept changing. I don't know why they would bring in one character. I mean, it was a very critical episode.
Okay,
it was
that's
2
good.
against plus, and then we brought in someone else, another podcaster who really likes it.
Okay.
So we had 2 con and 1 pro.
Nice.
And so I was very critical. I was like, I don't understand this. I think it's hyper stylized. I think it's way too Koreanified. I think that I thought there was a lot of it's Koreanified. I didn't even mean that as a pejorative, but like, Don Dada is very Korean in style.
Nice. So you Gege Akatami. Okay. No, it's true. So it's solo leveling, right? South Korean style.
Exactly. There's a particular hyper stylized neon. They're using the aeonic colors, pink and blue, pink and turquoise. You'll see them all the time. You want to talk about anime as a hermeneutic? Let's talk about anime that uses aeonic colors, like Psyche K. I saw Eros brought it up. Well, interestingly, Psyche K wears the aeonic colors. He has pink hair and he wears green glasses. I'm just saying those are the aeonic colors. And this is also what got me blocked by Jay Dyer, was pointing this out. He was calling someone satanic. And I was just, or he was calling someone, I forgot if he was calling someone a Kabbalist or something. He said
Which is satanic to him. That's satanic to him.
It was
That's
something.
it is retarded. That's satanic.
It was retarded. Okay. So it doesn't matter. He was calling someone, and all I said, I promise this is all I said. I just said, Jay, if you are going to call someone this, maybe you shouldn't be using the aeonic colors in your PFP. That's not horrible. That's not bad advice.
No,
there's nothing wrong with that. There's no, that's not even fiery. So
he probably didn't even understand what you're saying.
He definitely understood what I'm saying. Come on, Brandon. They know, the Orthodox bros all know. They all practice magic. They know that their crosses, that they all know that it's the Kabbalah tree. They understand that there is like different states of consciousness in the heterochasm and all that stuff. But they all get it.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that it is the Aeon of the Daughter in terms of like the knowledge is free. The knowledge is freely out there. It is completely on the internet. It is digital. It is open.
So does that mean, do you think that's why and it is in anime, and that's why they think it's satanic, and that's nonsense? It's Luciferian for sure, but it's definitely
look,
it's crazy. Do you think that's why they don't? Jay Dyer's never debated. I want to debate. If we can hook up me debating Jay Dyer, please, somebody out there, hook that up, because I would fucking love to. I've got a degree in philosophy. He cannot push me over in the philosophical conceptual understanding of a dialogue. And so he hasn't done it because he'll know he'll lose to an actual practicing magician. Anyway, go on.
Well, he's an actual practicing magician,
but he
likes to pretend.
That's not what his followers think. His followers are like ravaging,
right? But they're all traveling the Sephira in their own way. No, they are. That's what they're doing. They're traveling it.
You ring me in.
They're traveling it in their own conceptual way. That's what they're doing.
Of course.
And so the pretense is like magic's not real, or reality is like this one thing and this is the truth. Like that's false. That's what people think Luciferianism is. The false truth. Luciferianism is really the impulse to follow the actual primordial truth, to follow where the origin of the light really comes from, not to get stopped by the effulgence, the fake sort of flickering of gold.
The false deity,
exactly,
which is
the appearance existence before you. But in terms of Satanism, I find this term very interesting because I take this term to mean adversarial. That's all I take it as,
because that's what it means.
So I have no problem taking an adversarial or quote unquote satanic position on many things. This is also very Buddhist, and there's even a practice of tantric metaphysics of debating, of discoursing with magic. So people can look that up if they don't believe me. But anyways, there's perfectly acceptable. So I just want to say that like it's okay that people are doing like all these hermeneutics, it's contained in anime, but it's like, what are you believing for yourself? That's really what I care about. I'm not telling people how to live. I'm just saying for Jin, for me, it's something I wrestle with, you could say. It's like, what do I believe reality really is? I'm not saying I have a fixed idea of it. The problem is I don't have a fixed idea of it. So what I do rely on is I rely on the practices. So to go back to that like statement of like how people should orient themselves, personally, I orient myself with the practice. That is the only way I know. It's not to take refuge in any person. People can do what they want. I just take refuge in the Buddha, Deva, Dakini, and maybe Dharmapala. Maybe. That's all I know. Other people can do what they want. But for me, I need to do practices every day. So I think meditation is extremely important.
We have to. You have to. And it is. I think you have to.
I think that to study Kabbalah, I really think it's important. I think people will get a lot out of it. I think it does depend on your source. I think it does. I think I do personally love David Hyam Smith, but everybody's going to get a different conceptual reading of that. than I do, right? Because I'm like a more of a intermediate practitioner. So for me, it's talking about something more fundamental, maybe more Buddhist,
Yeah, I
like
don't actually know who he
non-theist.
is.
He's an important Kabbalist of our kind of general, like he's older than us, like 30 years older than us, but he's like an important Kabbalist, and he talks about non-theistic and non-dual Kabbalah. So he actually prefers a tree that does not have death in it, but is that part as layer, which I agree with actually. But I think it can be on the tree conceptually. Anyways, we won't get into this. But anyways, I'm just saying that people should study Kabbalah. They should study meditation. I think people should study Dharma. People can do whatever they want. If you want to study Greek Orthodox like meditation, then study that. But like I think the whole thing is to like be committed to like what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, there are many vehicles, right?
Right. And then if you want to get into magic, what is magic? Is magic ritual, or is magic the inner stuff that you're doing in your own mind? Well, I would argue that at one point those two things are the same thing.
Yeah, they are.
So you're learning the outer thing to do the inner thing.
Yeah.
But once you can do the inner thing, then you're free to fly.
No, I yes, you are. You're free to levitate and become invisible. Okay. The reason, so what I'm distilling everything you down to say is the same thing I always say, meaning Eros, meditating and thinking a lot are not the same thing. But I think that it's really important. She's so funny. I think it's really important that the idea and the differentiation between like reflection and contemplation, which I think is really important and can be a form of meditation, is that you are focusing your will on one thing, like reading John Milton's Paradise Lost. You cannot be scrolling on your phone and read Milton's Paradise Lost, because that poem, which is what it is so line by line expansive, and everything has meaning. It has no fluff within it, and so you need to be in on it. So as well as a lot of the older classical literature, which is why I think people should just have classical literature around. Just pick it up, because you don't need to start at the beginning. You just pick it up and you read a sentence, and you can meditate upon that sentence, and that becomes a ritual in and of itself, because you are invoking then that framework of existence. But to go back to what I was saying, is like train the will again, right? Train the will, calm the mind, build the imaginatory factors, and have an embodied practice, because that is then the ability to integrate these two syntheses and things that have been broken apart in our history for such a long time. And then when you do that, to lead us back into what we're talking about, then when you do that, you have the ability to become your own anime character. And I don't know what people are doing, but there's only one will, and it is to become an anime character. And so, and why that's important is because then you are becoming your own variation of a main character in your journey, and then understanding that everyone else around you is a part of this great cosmic drama.
Well, I have a really good friend who's named Joe Nally. He's a writer. He wrote a book called Asian, Suicidal, and Promiscuous. Anyways, we won't get into that. He's a great dude, honestly. And I have 2 episodes with him. But
yeah.
He would love to hear you say this, simply because he's interested in Discordianism, which I know you're not, but I think it's funny that you're positing this kind of conceptual reality that is very chaos magic.
I started as a Discordian because
I know you love Robert Anton Wilson.
I love Robert Anton Wilson. Okay.
I know. Talked about this many times. I know you. And my friend Sochki, I'm good friends with this guy, another Kabbalist named Sochki. He loves Robert Anton Wilson. So I'm not saying that you are uncomfortable with the title, but I think that the Discordianism is like very proto chaos magic, right? So it gives the seeds, at least, for chaos magic as it became. So in the 80s with Peter Carroll.
Yeah.
But what I mean is I think that he would love to hear you say it, because he has this idea of kind of like, he calls it anime realism or anime futurism. He calls it both. And so I agree with that, this idea of like this kind of perceptual way of thinking. If we want to reimagine the world, this kind of meta reality as anime, that is very Hyperborean too. Like, I know that was a big discourse on Twitter, like with the figures, we won't even bring it up, like the figure skating and all that, but it is my word first. Just want to say, anyways,
Just want to say
but
that I will sue you if you use my word.
no, I won't. I don't have any copyright on it. I totally was just like it was a word that I made up, and we did a whole Grey Lodge series on it, like 11 parts. So people can, they're actually important. So people can actually go listen to that. We did it over a year ago. So we were way ahead of the discourse, as you want to call, if you want to call it that. Anyways, the point is that I think, yeah, we can reimagine the world in sort of like anime realism, not futurism. We don't want to
No.
be too much preoccupied with what could be or what is coming. Maybe it's better to be preoccupied with what we can control. At least that's what I would say. So,
which
but
is
I do
what
agree.
anime is trying to teach you. It's trying to teach you what this is what you control. This is what you can't control. Right.
I think there are some downsides to anime, which is where I think that it relies on this whole Japanese like kind of collective capacity or society, that it's like a collective group that it's going to like push forward everyone for their individuated, this is also very ionic, their individuated talents, right? But we know that mass groups don't really individuate. They tend not to individuate. They tend to go more alike.
Yeah. Oh, for
and I
sure.
think this is going to be the struggle. And I think this is where anime struggles. And I think this is where like Japan kind of even struggles as a society. I think this is actually where America is a little stronger, but maybe too much. Maybe it's like we need the polarity in between the polarities. It's like we need the individual, but you also need the person who can work in the mass, but is not necessarily strictly confined by it. Maybe that's the agreement of working in a group, is that you are not like confined by someone else's will. I'm not saying like flexible relationships or anything like that. I'm saying that you have to be individuated enough to decide what you believe on your own.
Yeah, there's no other way. Yeah, I think I think that's 100% right, and there's no other way to go about it, because if you do, you become a sheeple, you become a Mr. Smith, or you become just a part of the herd. And the idea of a magician is to not be a part of the herd. You're supposed to become your own priest, or like Robert Anton Wilson talks about, you become your own pope.
Well, that's a very interesting, very Discordian way he puts that. Like obviously, because there's the Pope, anti-Pope. It's very dialectical, very Aristotelian, right?
Yeah.
Up and down, as above, so below. In the polarities, as I prefer. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that it is about becoming like. I think it's possible. I think it's at least possible to try to be like, I think a lot of what magic is and what it purports to be is the practice of like adamantization or like reaching the HGA or like all of that, all of the, getting out, escaping samsara, escaping the black cube matrix, open the hyperspace kingdom and like surfing the aether wave on the internet archipelago, which is exactly the reality we live in right now. So it's really interesting that Robert Anton Wilson also wrote about the internet archipelago way back in the 80s. And I don't know, it's just like it's kind of like all of these we're in this very psychic time, I think. And I think this is where the difference is. I think we're moving more into psychic time with technology.
Yeah,
I think technology makes people a lot more psychic. I think people will go away less from ritual practice. That's why I think meditation is really important, because I think it helps distinguish what is your own mind versus what is other people's opinions.
Yeah, and I wonder about. I love that actually. I love that. But then the other thing I always think about is all these ceremonial magical rituals is what kind of egregores have been created through time with these practices. And so it's like one of the big things is that we don't want to cut ourselves away from egregores, not add ourselves towards it, because we don't really truly understand what we're taking upon when we do those things.
Well, Aeon of the Daughter dances on the corpse of all 5 poisons of the mind. So she dances on all the egregores, and the sun in Buddhism, who's named Kumara, Vajra Kumara, he's like a knife, kind of like a sword. It's a sword, and it stabs right through the corpse. And then there's another one, and she rides a chariot, and she kind of rides the chariot over. She rides an actual corpse cart, so she pushes through all obstacles of matter. That's the whole idea. So what I'm relaying is that I think it's important that people break like the conceptual sort of these klipas that people are, these egregores. You call them egregores, you call them klipas. They're just like abstractions away
Yeah.
from the truth. And
Yeah.
so I try not to worry about it. I just try and worry about my own. And why I brought up the daughter is because she is the princess of breaking klipas, not just the princess of the klipas, but of breaking them. So through that kind of aeonic thinking of free will liberated by love, we then can dance upon the
Yeah.
conceptual corpse.
That's great. Okay, here's my JJK giving. I'm giving it to you and why I think it actually can teach you magic and why it's probably better than what I didn't hear you talk about when you were taking the con route. Okay, you ready? Are you ready, Jin?
I'm ready. Go for it.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so Jujutsu Kaisen, for those of you who don't know, it's a story about a character named Yuji Itadori. Yuji Itadori, at the beginning of the first episode, his grandpa dies. And what ends up happening and why this is so important is because before his grandfather dies, he looks at his grandson. He's all like, I want you to, Itadori, die a good death. Die a meaningful death and die in a way that brings you happiness and helps the people around you. That's basically what he says. Obviously, that stems from that Bushido code, right? Is to when you wake up, you are to die daily. You shall wake up and to not die a dog's death, it says in the Hagakure. And so Itadori then is part of, and why it's occult and why it's such a great magical show is because of Itadori is part of occult society in his high school. Itadori has all the athletic ability, all the strength, all the speed, and all these things, but he hates sports and playing with everybody else. And so he's like, I want to do something. I can't stand all these other things, even though I'm better than everybody out. He's kind of a dip-de-doo. And so what he does is he becomes part of the occult society of his high school, where there's these two more nerdy characters. And what they do is in the beginning, they find a finger and it's wrapped in a magical sigil cloth, and they open it, and then that gets opened. And then what ends up happening is when they open that up, all of these, what they call in that world, curses start coming up, all these different demons and what was the term you used, Jin, for egregore? The
Klipa.
The Klipa. Thank you. So
I forgot. Solar said we had to use one or the other. Now I'm sorry. He's gonna be mad. But anyways, I'm totally forgetting. He said in the chat, remember? He was like, we need to use it like this, and then we need to use the other one like yids. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, that's amazing. And then now I've totally forgotten. So I use Klipa, Klipot. I'm trying to be the edgelord. I think that's what it was. It was like you have to be a edgelord left-hand path sometimes, and then be a yid other times. I know. So, anyways, whatever it is, it's egregore is just a klipa, because an egregore is as a thought form. It's just an aggregate, exactly what a klipa is, exactly what it is. A skanda and a klipa, exactly the same thing. They even interchange them in Sanskrit and Greek. Another like kind of weird parallel word, just saying. Anyways, but it just is a thing that clouds our perception. If you want to call it God, that's fine.
That's fine. Yeah, but then the idea of that is that it's through emotion. In Jujutsu Kaisen, curses are created because there are humans who don't have the ability to use cursed energy, and that is the magical energy that is used in Jujutsu Kaisen. So all of the sorcerers who are part of Jujutsu High and other people in that universe or in Japan who are sorcerers, they have the ability to tap into cursed energy. Normal humans do not. So we can call them the mundane, the plebeians, or the muggles. They're normal humans. They do not know how to. And because they do not know how to tap into their cursed energy or cannot, that means they create curses with high levels of emotion, fear, worry, lust, all these different things. And those low-level curses don't have an intelligence. They're just feeding and sucking dry everything that is around them all the time. Normal humans cannot see them. Sorcerers can. And so those sorcerers try to show up to places, and they put bindings around, or circles, or barriers around places so humans cannot get into them. And then they go in and then they destroy the hungry ghosts. Right, Howard. They destroy the curses that are around there, so humans don't get killed by them, because the curses can, when they get big enough, they affect every human around them. Some of them are attached to humans, other of them roam around places. They're kind of like Oni, right? Or these different things like that. And so the idea is then that when you get into expand the idea of what an egregore is when you get groups of people who are afraid of certain big human nature vices, like, you know, we are afraid of fire or volcanoes or human existence, meaninglessness, and different things. Those create higher level curses that actually have intelligence. So that is the other definition for egregore, which means an autonomous entity in and of itself that was created or is just around because it's so old, because of that force of nature has been around for so long. And then when we come to find out that Yuji Itadori, who then has to eat the finger of what we come to find out is Sukuna, the king of curses, he then gains the power of Sukuna, this king of curses. Come to find out that not only is there one finger, there are people are going to kill me, 20 fingers, I believe, because he has 4 sets of hands. He has 2 sets of hands. And so the whole Jujutsu Kaisen is about, so then you get the big bad Buddha character, or a character that's kind of like Kakashi, or the cocky badass master. His name is Gojo on the thumbnail. He's a badass. He has the ability, he's the strongest sorcerer there is. And so in the first episode, he handles Yuji, who can turn on and off this king of Sukuna character that sits now, that dwells within him in his own domain. And so then it's this whole thing where Yuji is either going to be killed because nobody wants Sukuna back, because Sukuna will destroy the world, or Gojo is like, no, what we can do is we can have Yuji find all 19 other fingers, and in doing so, he can control Sukuna, and then maybe we can figure out how to exorcise Sukuna out of him to destroy this high-level curse, who used to be one of the strongest sorcerers of all time and then wanted to gain immortality. And so what he did is he ended up becoming a curse himself. That's what Sukuna is. And so it is, then you get the whole, just like in Naruto, you get the 3-man team with 2 of the guys and a girl. You get Megumi, Itadori, and Hinabi. No, the girl character, I can't remember her name. She's awesome. But then this whole thing is them trying to figure out about Sukuna and everything that's going along. And so why I think it's so important as magicians, sorcerers, mystics, and seekers of all kind to understand egregores. This is a great watch, because not only do you get to see how human emotion causes egregores to happen and humans don't even see them, then you get to see what it's like when you get to see the actual training scenes of these characters go through how to train their will, train their imagination, train their breath, train their calmness and their mind, and then train their body of the warrior way. And in doing so, they do that at a school that, and then there's all these other conspiracies going along in time. And so JJ, I could speak more about it, but that's one of the main reasons. And Satoru Gojo, when he finally figures out how to use his cursed energy to such a degree where he can do multiple levels of these things at once, he basically becomes the Buddha character. And when he dies, but he doesn't actually, he's on the verge of death and he's reborn, it kind of has this divine madness, because he finally figured out all of these things that he hadn't been able to figure out, which then made him the best and the most badass sorcerer of all time. And when he does that, he's like flying in the air high on his life. And he did, he says the old Buddha nature thing of I alone have become the anointed one, as he's like flying in the air and then just beats up this bad guy. Anyway, that's my JJK claim.
Okay, so to follow that up, I'm just going to do a run through of Kami-sama no Kiss. So basically,
Please.
there is a girl who is burdened by her father's gambling debts. He leaves Japan for ostensibly Brazil. And so she is faced with eviction from their apartment. So she ends up homeless in a park. She's like 14 years old. And so a strange man approaches her. I know how this sounds. He turns out to be a god. He's actually a local god, a local spirit, a marriage spirit. And he kisses her on the forehead. And so she gets the seal of the land god. She actually gets his name. So another kind of example of the logos being really sort of universally important. And so she ends up moving into the shrine of his former shrine, because he wants to go wander the world. So he can't be a local god and wander the world. So that's why he gives her his magic. So she has to kind of navigate the wild ways of being a local marriage spirit, but she's not a spirit. She's also a high school girl, and so she inherits his. He has a little retinue of a fox spirit. So there's a like a grumpy sort of tsundere, kind of like angry fox god, I guess, who lives there, or angry demigod who lives there. And then there are two little I forgot what they're called, but they're called corpse lanterns or corpse flames. Like they're the witch lamps, like will-o-wisps. They were like the two little kids, and they manifest as flames or they manifest as little kids. So she inherits like a whole retinue, and it's like all about her learning like how to channel her magic in like the kanji. So she has to learn how to write like fulu, like seal charms. I'm using the Chinese word obviously for it, but she has to learn how to write them, like blessings for marriages. And she and so another part of the series is like all these other gods want to eat her. All these other kinds of like, it's very Journey to the West kind of thing. Like they want her magical essence because they want the seal of the earth god, or the local god, the god that went wandering the world. So she has it. So if they eat her, they actually gain the status of a god, even though they're just a spirit. So it's a lot about how other spirits try and like inhibit her, other gods even, because a god who has no worshippers is what? Just a spirit. There is no difference.
Yeah.
And it shows that. It shows that again in the series. And so there's a white snake god. There is a crow god. Everybody loves the Tengu. So there's a Tengu character. She eventually inherits this whole harem, as they want to call it, but it actually has metaphysical significance because she is like the shrine maiden. Like I referenced Inuyasha at the very beginning. She is like the Kagome character. She's pure, she's pristine, she is Aeon the daughter. They like her, but she only has eyes for one. She's in love with the fox guy. So
of course, it's a silver foxes,
right. Well, he's not silver. I mean, I don't know how old he is, but it's an age appropriate. We're not trying to get canceled.
That's a joke. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I forgot about that. It's so quick. When you're a normal human being, you just imagine these people are your age. It's just one of those things that happens where I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Anyway, got weird. So that sounds amazing.
Well, it's not like it. It's not like your two series. It's not like it's not. They're neither of them are.
Yeah, I'm more of a shonen. I like the martial, but
this has elements of shonen because it has action, and she has to use magic, and she goes to the underworld. It's a big part of it. She has to journey to the underworld, and she has to journey to heaven. It's a very shamanic story, if you want to call it that. Like a very I referenced at the beginning, like Okinawan shamanism from the Ryukyu Islands. Like this is the Jeju Island. If people look on like South Korea, everybody loves South Korea. Jeju Island.
Solo leveling. That's where the ants were.
Right. That's where they are. So that's the whole thing is Jeju Islands, where there's a particular kind of shamanism where it's like there's a Princess Bari, and she goes down to the underworld, and then she comes back, and then she carries a peach to heaven, or she carries it from heaven into the underworld, one of those stories. And she is the primordial shamaness, is this like little innocent virgin girl in the shamanic story. So there is something kind of that is kind of what the Mikio, the shrine maiden is. She's kind of like pure, pristine. She's virginal. It's not like Virgin Mary. I'm saying Aeon of the daughter, not Aeon of the Virgin Mother. I'm saying that she's not a mother. She's not impregnated by these people. I'm saying that it's different, but I think that it's what I'm trying to say is it's teaching you through a different method, which is what I deliberately picked series that were a little different. Like Noragami is a shonen, like absolutely not a shonen. Okay, nice. It's more of like a little older, like for older, like for our age. Okay,
right.
But this one is definitely more of a girls series, but it has action elements, and it's totally watchable from a guy's perspective because it's funny. Nice. And what it is teaching you subtlety and like sort of like to move through the worlds, the three worlds. That's why it's a shamanic journey. Through the three worlds of laughter. Because what do you have at the end of the day? You have friendship, you have fucking laughter. Sorry to swear. You have laughter, you have friendship, and you have like magic and this like crazy thing that we call consciousness, reality, magic, and like the world. Like what is the world? The world can be beautiful and it can be very degraded. and it has been for like it's always been very. It, it has a dualistic appearance. So that's how the series navigates it. It navigates hardship through sort of like humor, love, compassion, and trying to mutual understanding.
Yeah. And I think that's really important is the part about, you know, the love, the laughter in the community. And it goes back to why Full Metal, I think, hit so hard for me was, and many people, was because of their showing that Ed gave up his alchemy for his brother because he realized he didn't need it anymore. It was like the scene where he's like, it's right here. You can have it. It's all yours. And Truth sits in front of him and is all like, you did it, young alchemist. You figured it out. Here he is. Take him home. And it opens up, and all of a sudden you get fucking Al's body over there with the Tree of Life behind him. And interesting enough, I have a whole video I'm going to be coming out with on the Tree of Life that's beyond. I did a short on it, but the behind Ed's Tree of Life is Robert Flood's Tree of Life, right? So it's deeply occulted and esoteric from the tradition. And I just think that's a really important aspect, is because magic is nothing without the people around you to be able to live in a magic life, right? It's like, what good is, you know, that's why I deject aestheticism as well, is because it's like there's no point in going off alone on a mountaintop. There is a point to it, but that's not for my life. That's why the sorcery or the magic is there. To be a magician is because to be a magician is to walk amongst others.
I agree with you, Brandon. I just want to point out, as someone who just lived on a mountain, like very solo, I do live a very solo existence. Yeah. This is no secret, right?
Yeah.
Look, everyone has different times in their life.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Everyone has different, like, you know, they have different positionalities on the tree that they can occupy. That doesn't mean I don't want other things for myself, but right now at this time, this is the right move for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not an ascetic. I mean, in the sense that, like, yeah, I am an ascetic. Like, I have a very strict diet. I have a very strict, like, I'm very conservative lifestyle in a way.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm not. Yeah. But I'm not an ascetic, as in like I reject or like make great grandiose judgments or pronouncements on things. I don't. Yeah. And I'm not an ascetic where I'm like I'm in denial of things. That's not asceticism. People, especially in the West, associate it with like denial of bliss. Bliss is a primordial state in Buddhism, so it's a very important like place to go conceptually. Not saying as like, I'm not saying concert yoga or sex tantra or anything like that, but conceptually, like, is in your mind. So you have to understand those states to be able to get there. So I'm not an ascetic as in like principle. I'm not like an agori on the carnal ground or anything like that. I don't reject sexuality or human relationships at all. I'm not a Gnostic in like that way, like an anti-body Gnostic. I'm like a person who believes in being generative, but I'm also, and regenerative. I like that word, but I also think that, look, we have all lived lives that are colorful and varied. And I just prefer not to make grand pronouncements for how others choose to live. But I will just say, for me, this was the right move. This was exactly how my star game should go, if you want to call it that.
No, that's good. That's good. And you were able to have the means to do so. And so I think that's it's one of those important aspects of things, is like everything that comes along on our path is meant to be there, no matter if it's suffering or if it's like glad tidings. Because on my journey, I'm come to the reason, like I have that I'm like a hermit. But then I have, for a few hours every week, I go out and I'm like amongst the people. And so it's an interesting thing. The only way I feel like but other than that, I'm at home all the time, which is Kaiva, basically, and Rico, of course, but who's our little dog. But it's such a fascinating thing on what you're finding in a lot of these anime and in these great stories. It seems like this main character is continually finding his small little magical group or his clique that then he moves upon his path on. And in doing so, he then comes across other characters that then come in and out of their life. But you are moving through the world in a way that is bringing upon whatever it is, that hero's journey to make that great return, right? That's kind of, there's always a great return.
This is really important. I'm so glad you said that, Brandon, because this is a foundational idea in Buddhism and Tantra specifically. This idea of the Sangha. What is the Sangha? There's a certain meaning of the Sangha that actually means the Dakinis. Who are the Dakinis? Is it some sex cult in Greece? I don't know, with like a bunch of like sky wives, as we like to joke about.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it can be, sure, that can be one way to people can understand it. I know that's not how I understand it, but people can do what they want.
yeah.
I actually think that the Sangha of Dakinis is bodhicitta in perception, which is actually a legitimate way to understand that. So,
Mm,
like people who are in perception of each other, who are acknowledging of their own flaws, but also the flaws. It's not like a Maoist struggle session, but it is important to, like, if you've done wrong, you should make amends. I often do wrong. I often have to make amends. So that
yeah,
is what it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
Um, but that's what I think. That's what I think the community can be. I think it can be. I do think it's important. I think it's important for every magi or every sorcerer, and I'm definitely a sorcerer. Like, I'm just personally self-identifying. I'm not
yeah.
telling anyone else what Brandon is, or what anyone else is, or any other tantric Buddhist is. I'm just saying I'm a sorcerer on the common ground. I do follow Dharma. I do practice Tantra. I obviously follow Buddha Dharma. So yeah, but I am a sorcerer. So that's all I can. Again, that's the primordial place from which I can speak. You can say that.
Yeah, that's great. No, I love that. So then the real question is, Jin, as we work on our wrap up here, I appreciate everybody out there. We've had a lot of great comments from the squad, which is really nice to hear. And there's and I think Howard made a good point here with anime probably can't teach you magic, but it can probably point you in the right direction of initiation. I truly believe that when you watch certain anime with the right kind of eyes, it is like an initiation, but you can't get the complete initiation from it. You have to then go into the world and practice what you learn. And what I mean by that is take the archetypes that you are witnessing through the characters, because the characters aren't the archetypes. They're just emoting a sort of force from the archetypal world that you are trying to understand. And when you see these right characters, because the stories, it's about finding the story that resonates with your nervous system to open you up to these things. And so not all these stories are going to do that for you, just like not all practices and techniques or religions are going to be that one for you. Your nervous system, I believe, based upon whatever it is, the nervous system, the religion of your past, or the astrological significances of the stars on your life, there are certain vehicles or certain techniques or certain systems that are better for each person. And I think that's the same thing with anime. With any story, anime is just a filler for that ideal of what the kind of stories that we like is in Jin and I the most currently, maybe or maybe not. That's what Jin thinks too. But the idea then that I think you can be, which is why I'm not so set on certain systems like the Golden Dawn or the Rosicrucians or the Martinists or the OTO or the Freemasons or anything like that, because I think they're myopic systems. Those
Well,
systems, they
they
are,
are. I
right?
100% agree.
Yeah.
100% agree. But I know Talima gets a lot of hate on occult, like Twitter, and like Georgina Rose. You do no favors to the OTO. Like, seriously, like,
Yeah.
please stop it. The Talima is actually a good system in a way. It does. I'm not saying that the
Yeah.
ritual system, I don't get it. Like, whatever. That's not my idea of the world. Okay. I'm not a Telemite.
Yeah.
I'm saying their approach to neo Gnosticism, their approach to the Aeonic cycle.
It's great.
You're talking
No.
about something that is more
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, maybe it's mythology. So what?
So what? That's
Jumipon
yeah.
Rinpoche talks about this. He says
Yeah.
the understanding of the movement of cosmology, of like certain stories of the gods, if they are told in a skillful way, that doesn't mean every single story is of the same caliber. But if
No.
they are told in a specific way, they can actually help people recognize the primordial truth.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with people believing in a mythological cycle. I do.
I think
Okay,
you
maybe you
should.
call
I
that
think you
code.
need to. No, I think that's not. Yeah, no, but that's the differentiation between people misunderstanding what mythology is. Mythology is not fiction. Mythology is like how our organs express themselves. Joseph Campbell states. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things that it's got an instinct. It has the ability to tell a story. It's the interaction of our internal body upon the world. So
No, I totally agree. So what I'm just saying is, like, I think the OTO is not, I mean, I'm not telling people to join the OTO, but I'm just saying that,
never, never.
like, I interviewed Gregory Peters. He's like kind of a runaway Typhonian OTO misfit. He was involved with the Aeon of Mott workings in the 90s.
Nice.
I interviewed him with Solar Exile from our lodge, and
Well, David
he's a cool
Schumacher was
guy.
the man. David Schumacher was amazing. We interviewed him on Occult Rejects, and I think if all Thelemites were like David Schumacher, It's hard for me not to be like, I feel like I'm a Thelemite then.
Like, look, this is how I feel. I just know what I am, and like that's all I can define. And everyone else, so many people. I used to think people would identify as like Hindu or get into fights with people who were like identifying as like pagan or Hindu or pagan Dharma or Tantra pagan or pagan Tantra or whatever the fuck it was. And the reality is people don't even know. I can't judge on anyone else because all I can control is myself, but people don't even know what those words even mean in a
Yeah,
historical way, like at
yeah,
all.
it's true.
Most people. I'm not even saying I do. I'm just saying most people don't have like a reference point for those ideas. So
Which is
this
why it's
kind of point.
esoteric. That's what esoteric means.
Right, but I also don't like I'm not a gatekeeper. I'm not trying to like be like, "Oh, don't
No,
do
no,
this,
yeah,
do
yeah.
this," or like tell people what to do. That's why I always like place a lot of emphasis. I feel like I do. I try to
You
is
do.
on like people have to do like of their own will. Like I am not a teacher. I'm not trying to teach people. I'm just saying it's just I get asked and people write me emails and are like this and are like this and I'm like I do not like I am just a person who has had very positive experiences with tantra and with Buddhist tantra. And
Yeah,
so that's the religion that I practice and that's like the sort of cosmology and ontology that I believe is the truth. That's for me. That's like the most like profound sort of like interpersonal like thing I could ever reveal.
yeah. No, I agree. And why then I think that we both may I think when I first started, I was really deeply integrated into Crowley's work and because his book 4 in Magic Theory and Practice, the big blue book, you can actually see it. It's right there. It was so profound because exactly what you said is exactly what Crowley was trying to get at in that working. He's like, I don't care how you do it. And that's why I keep emphasizing there are the mystical practices and what he deemed fit, the 8 limbs of yoga, right? The yama and the niyama, the ethical and the moral, and then you figure out your posture, you figure out your breath, you figure out your single pointed of focus and your will, and then you use that, and that's the way you get into the magical practice. Because without the practice of mysticism, your magic won't work. And hopefully, and then again, Jin is much more careful when he speaks than I don't think people should be doing low magic. If you need to do magic to find your keys, that's fine. You're doing it against your own consciousness, not somebody else's. Because I think it's really dangerous to practice your magic upon somebody else. And so that's just my thing. And that's what I would say I would warn others against is using your magic against others because
Let
you
me
can't.
just say, for two things. So one thing I
Yeah.
agree with you is the Saint Anthony prayer to find your keys.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
saying that shit works every
It
fucking
works.
time.
It
I
works
don't
every time.
care. I
It
don't
does.
care what religion you are,
Yeah.
what language it is in. That shit works. It really does. I like
Yeah. It
literally
does.
did this yesterday, like played this game with someone yesterday, and it literally worked. It was within 10 minutes. I'm
Well,
serious. Like
Kaiva told us on the rejects when we lost the keys to the house, she did horary astrology to find the keys, and she found them. And I was, unbeknownst to myself, gaslighting us the whole time. They were in my blazer's breast pocket. I didn't know. So it
so
works. So
right,
that's what. Yes,
exactly. So it
yes,
works. So in terms of using it against other people, I agree. Like I'm like of the opinion that you should tame your own demons, which
that.
arise from your own mind and like from
Yeah,
your own where you live.
yeah,
And so if you want to call that your mind or your, primordial space of awareness, that's fine. I think that that's what should be like our attention to. But unfortunately, we live in like a very um place with a lot of access to, as we talked about, occult practices, a lot of openness about their use, and a lot of patronage of sorcerers for hire, which is perhaps the actual oldest profession in the world is the sorcerer for hire.
yeah.
And so, yes, unfortunately, people do their own magic against other people. People do their hire other people to do magic. That's fine. I mean, I'm not saying it's fine. What I'm saying is I cannot control it, but I recognize the need to have offensive and defensive
For sure.
practices
Yes.
because of that situation. So it is not acceptable to me to like, I just think that we have to be pragmatic. And as you said, like you're a big fan of pragmatism. So like so am
Yeah.
I. Like the realistic thing is like it's great to be like a peaceful Buddhist on the mountain. That is not realistic at
Yeah.
all.
No,
The
not
re-
at the same
the
age.
actual realistic thing is to have practices that defend and also um allow you to access those primordial states of awareness uh, while doing an activity, that 5 and the 6 consciousness together, that Yesod and Tiferet connection. So that is what we try and do with deity yoga. So that is why I personally come from that angle perspective, is because I think it's a really important way to like to live in the world, which is full of demons. And I'm not saying
Oh yeah.
demons as in like a like a Manichaean Christian way, like
No,
demons are like coming out of like some gap in hell. Like maybe show me.
maybe.
Okay, I
Show
don't
me.
know.
Show
Show
me.
me. But the other, like maybe from the void in my mind, maybe from
Yeah,
the
because
abyss
if
in
you
my
show
mind.
me, I'm gonna be so excited.
Well, this is the thing, is like I think that this is how a lot of perception gets mismanaged, right? Or
It does.
managed,
It does.
is because it gets sort of put in these categories that can never be proven or disproven. So shout out
Yeah.
Cassandra. But absolutely, I think I think a good sorcerer has a has a strong understanding of both the right and the left hand, in the
Yes.
sense of like the shield and the
And the
sword and the
sword and
buckler.
yeah,
Excuse me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that you have a good understanding of like what needs to be done, and make sure you can take care of things as they arise. But I agree, it is better to be acausal, meaning that you are not intentionally causing destructive karma just based on your feelings or your whims, desires, low feelings. I think aim for higher. That is me. I don't know if that's even realistic anymore. I've just like had so many interactions with people where it just feels like, is it even possible? But then I just remember back to the primordial nature of things. Everything has a Buddha nature.
Yes.
And so I have to just accept that it is true, and I can't control anyone else's Buddha nature or its arising or self combustion or like re arising or whatever it is, except for my own perception. So I just have to focus on myself. I cannot be the arbiter. So I think that that is what is great about right now, is that we can all be our own arbiters using the fire of discernment, the fire of Gevra right now, that blazing fire, and say, we can choose not to believe in all these bullshit narratives. And
Yeah.
we can actually burn down the ark, to use like another
Yeah.
Nuria example. We don't have to be stuck in the klipas of like, this question came up of like the hermeticists of like 1800s.
Yeah.
Well, the Hermetists of 1800s were not like the Hermeticists of like 13th century, like Slovenia. So it's constant reformation, it's constant zimzum, it's constant like construction and deconstruction and like reformation and synthesis. And we're all learning totally new things. And I think and if anything from this episode, people can take away, is that you don't have to agree with the series and how it presents reality or magic or any like aspect of it, but you can take those little things that could be visualized, understood, recognized, or perceived, and you can utilize those in the mind palace, as Brandon is saying.
Yeah.
I've said this for a long time, and like one of the first series, and I can't not be remiss in not mentioning it, is Sailor Moon, because
Yes.
it is
Nice.
so fundamentally Kabbalistic.
Yeah.
It's a great primer for people to go watch Kabbalah. Obviously, I started understanding this more deeply from Sochki, who does have 2 episodes coming out on my show. I just want to say, just
Nice.
I'm really slow at editing. But, I mean, it is so fundamentally important, this idea of, um, I'm sorry, Sailor Moon and like the Crystal Millennium Kingdom. And sometimes you see the truth and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you recognize that the kingdom is there and sometimes you don't. That is the nature of the reality. Sometimes you're in the truth and sometimes you're not. That's why you have to temper your ego, temper
Yeah.
that Tiferatic kind of quality that says, like, I know exactly where I am, who I am, fixed in space. Like, no, Naga, you're not fixed in space. No one is fixed in space. We are traveling through time, so we transcend time in a way. But we exist in primordial space. We just forgot like to recognize it. We just don't remember anymore until we sort of regain our perceptual awareness through practices. And so for me, magic is not about like doing things or like getting your will necessarily, but it can be about things that are pragmatic and worldly in nature. So I used to be more like you, Brandon, where I was like more Golden Dawn style, like, oh, why do we need to do um worldly magic and this kind of thing? And I'm not saying I do, but I
Yeah.
can understand why somebody does like a wealth puja, or why somebody does like a lucky Rahu yantra, like to
Yeah.
use a more like Indian
Yeah. I
tantra
I
example.
get it.
Like
I
I
get it.
get why
I do
you would
too.
use those, and I use some of those things too. I'm not gonna lie. Because the reality is like that is part of tantra too, is to like have the sorcerer's tools, technologies, if you should so need them.
Yeah.
So
That's
that's
true.
where I'm at with it. Like, I'm like, pragmatism. I'm not like use magic as a replacement for your governing worldview or your religion or for anything. I'm just saying that it is a useful tool that one could utilize if one chooses to, for things that everyone else is utilizing in the world anyway.
Yeah.
We just have
No,
to be
it's yeah.
careful.
It's
But
yeah.
like consciousness, if we are acting in bodhicitta or compassion, and to ourselves, and to like generating, we are generating force rather than degenerating, right? That's what acts of like, you want to talk about acts of like compassionate magic is. What serves as a generative force? Is it like making like what we would call red offering sacrifices to like some pagan gods? Like personally, I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
So that's not what I'm
Yeah.
gonna do.
Yeah. Because it's mistaking the symbol for the thing it's trying to represent, I think, personally.
Well, I don't practice any of like that. I don't practice that kind of religion. Like I'm a Buddhist, so
Yeah.
like that's where I'm at with it. But like I can't control what anyone else does, and all I can say is that I do think our magic's really good, and I wouldn't practice something if I didn't personally think it was the best or one of the best systems. Obviously, I love Taoism. I've taken a lot from Shintoism in
Yeah.
terms of the
I
Abe no Seme,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
Japanese esoteric Buddhism is obviously a fascination for me, as it preserves a lot of the Chinese esoteric Buddhism
It does.
that is forgotten about. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that anime can teach you the reality of the world, can teach you history, can teach you culture and language, and can be its own hermeneutic, its own reality. And sure, if you want to imagine anime realist futurism, you should do so if that is your will.
Yeah, like that's a great answer. That's a great answer for the can anime actually teach you magic? um yeah, I think it's fascinating. It's something I say all the time. So as much as I harp on the idea of spell casting only in the effect of going out of your way to slay demons or dragons that aren't on your path. And so it's most of the time what I think is that when people are, and I'm just going to hit this topic just really lightly, when people are going out of their way to do that against others, it is going away out of your path. When I think that if you're doing your magic, you do it on yourself. So those, and obviously you need to hone your meditational mystical practices to be able to, in your own inner Buddha nature, to not allow people to bother you so much that you think you have to fucking spell cast on somebody else. And so that is again my take on that, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't also hone the shield and the sword. And I think that's the ideals of the Western esoteric tradition when it comes to understanding what the four elements are, right? And what they signify as instruments in the wand, sword, cup, and the disc. And these ideas are exactly that. When you need to use action, you use the sword, and that is the sword of reason to cut away all that is easily disintegrated upon having that sword that Michael wields, to make sure people cannot enter into the Garden of Eden, which is just another signifier of the higher supernulls, because that you have to be of purity to be able to wield and step your way through the abyss into the higher levels of those supernulls. And so upon that, you must also at the same time wield the cup of compassion, while also at the same time having the wand of intuition to know even to when to need to use your words or reason or rationale to be able to destroy all that shall come your way. I wear the helm of awe, the Nordic ruin, for a reason, because if I do know that we must play both the warrior and the philosopher, the warrior and the king, at the same time as the lover, and the magician. And so at the end of it, you need to also have an understanding of your own foundation and the discs, and be able to live in the world, have a home, have a dwelling, and have these things. I think what we're both getting at is to be able to make sure you have a good mythology to back all that up. And without the mythology, self-mythologization, what the great Miguel Conner says is, write your own gospel, live your own myth. And I think it's really important that we understand that. And he's not just saying write your own gospel as in create fucking whatever, but it's to hone your nervous system and your practice so much that then, just like the Kung Fu masters from the Shaolin Temple, you learn the systems so you can create your own. And then you create your own form. And when you have the ability to create your own form, you're taking from a lineage that stems so far into the past that it walks itself into the imaginal phantasmagoric spheres, up the fucking Malkuth, the kingdom, up the 32nd path of the imagination into Yesod, the moon, which then you can move from there to the rest of the realms of the tree of life, or whatever your model of existence that you like to view reality through. And so, can anime actually teach you magic? I think it is at all times, even shitty ones, are those spice of life, with the ideas that you're walking into the imaginal realm. Do I think those spice of life animes are also teaching you magic? No, not in the occulted Western esoteric traditional magic, but with the correct kind of lens and the ability, with great artists who are magicians, they're tapping into the unconscious mind and discovering something old and ancient through and putting on it faces that are helping us understand the divine cosmic drama. So,
Well, not to be that guy, but
please.
in Tantra, we do have 5 elements.
Yeah,
I know this
Chinese
is
medicine, there's 5 too. I'm trying to stop it.
well, Wuxing is not quite the same, as you know, Brandon. They are movements. They are the movements of elements. They are not the actual elements themselves. Anyways, this is my autism. Like, Brandon knows exactly the buttons to push. But anyways, in Tantra, we do have 5 elements, because Akasha, space, void, is the 5th element. So, although if you watch The Fifth Element, the actual Jean-Luc Besson film, the 5th element is actually love in perception. So that is what conquers space, is love and perception. It's quite profound. That's another very anime-inspired movie, because that's based on a Mobius comic.
Oh yeah,
The 5th element.
the French.
And he was a great magician, right? He was a
was.
great magician. All his works are hermeneutics. Like, everything that Mobius ever did was basically a magical working, right? And so everything Jodorowsky does is obviously also magical working, whether you agree with his like Typhonian OTO, like crazy blood pyramid shit or not. But I'm just saying that it is. He even has sequences of exactly what Brandon said, like the spinning of the different colors in the mandala to represent the different elements, and like the invocation in a specific order, and the direction turns in a specific order. I mean, it's all there. It's all there in reality, and it's always there in actual reality as well, because you are a magician. Everybody listening to this, you too can be a magician, because you can put those you can start to reorder reality to be more akin to your will, or more like aligned with it, or more in keeping with it. And part of that is knowing what your will is, and not being too extreme. Like Brandon was saying, don't be a nihilist, and don't be a utopianist. So be somewhere in the middle, be a pragmatist. And I think that's a great position for any magician. That's not like the most fun. I know that's not like the most fun. Everybody loves like Brandon was saying, he's the Hierophant with his Tau, his sword that pierces Malkuth. That is definitely one way. You can also be, there's other positionalities. You can be Temperance. I like the Temperance card. That's a very Sagittarian card. And so I think that's a great place to be, but that's not necessarily the archetype that everybody thinks is super fantastic. Like, it's not the Marvel superhero. It's not the anime like shonen hero, but you know what it is? It's someone who can deal with both real and relative truth.
Hmm. It's beautiful. Great. Boom. We did it. I think that is amazing. I think there's a lot going on in the world, and people just find their stories, find their myths, and make sure you understand that myth, magic, and meaning pervades all things in the world. I really appreciate everybody. We've had a great comment section tonight, Jen. I think we've had a great crew watch us and participate in this great story that we're in. Jen, tell them where they can find you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Brandon. This was obviously a long time coming. You can watch us bicker like this and much more extensively on all of our Rejects episodes, but we actually like each other and we agree on a lot of things. And so thank you so much, number one. Thank you to the Grey Lodge, all the people that showed up. Wow, we had quite a few people like Eros, Vanessa, Cassandra. Obviously, we'll shout out Howard. I see him. I remember him from all the Rejects episodes. Like, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. Obviously, the shows I kind of are for the misfits who find it. You know, I know Brandon wants to. I'm not sorry, Brandon. I know he wants to build his big media empire, Brandon, and I want that for him. I'm not unaligned with his will. I'm just saying that, like, for me, it has been about the misfits that we, you know, find along the way, along the path, along the marga. So, people can find me on Threshold Saints, Spotify, Apple. Follow me on Twitter at Wukong Reborn, WUKONG Reborn. You can follow the show at Threshold Saints on both X, Twitter, and IG. You can follow the show at thresholdsaints.substack.com, which is my favorite platform at the moment. And you can also, I think that's it. And the True Grey Lodge, obviously. The Grey Lodge, we will be having a Friday Night Gnostic Mass tomorrow, live on X, recorded for YouTube. Gnostic Mass, which is our group show. Friday Night Gnostic Mass, which is our group show. We do speculative Kabbalah, speculative Kalachakra, and speculative Gnosticism. So speculative Gnosticism for like 2 hours every other Friday. So there's a couple different co-hosts, 4 of us, and so we try and do that, and we bring up like Eros often comes up, and we try and make it like a dynamic conversation, both on the ongoings of the world and just like metaphysical ideas that we're thinking about, Kabbalistic happenings, astrology, whatever, but like not normie astrology. I try and teach them tantric astrology, but I'm sort of realizing that like I've been doing this for 3 years and maybe my hopes have waned a little in terms of like imparting any of this as like what people will understand, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that they can glean from it and hopefully plant their own garden, orchard of pomegranates, if you will, for themselves. So thank you so much, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Beautiful. No, thank you, Jen. And thank you, everybody out there who has been listening. We are all part of the zeitgeist of change. There's a great accelerationism going on in our day and age. There are many up there in the parasitic class who are choosing to want to try to push us down. And there are many in the lower branches of things that don't even know what's going on. So if you fall to a spectrum of some Hegelian dialectic of left or right, just know you don't have to choose. The idea is to find your heart, stand upon your will, and understand that you are not alone in questioning in the unknown about this ocean of chaos. The idea is that there's a myth, a magic, and meaning in the world. And Magus in the media is here as well as the great Threshold Saints in the Grey Lodge that Jin the Ninja has helped create. Discover, may I change the idea. We have only discovered these things that we have remembered from long ago. It's not that we have just met that, but we have been friends for many, many lifetimes. And the idea of creating a great community is just to remember in these trying times, it doesn't matter what some kind of top-down system is trying to impress upon you, that there is only one space, and that is the great space of the heart. So I'd like to say thank you to everybody. If you haven't gone and watched all my videos, make sure you do it. I have some amazing conversations. I just interviewed Mark Stavish. If you haven't listened to that interview, go do it right after this, because that man is brilliant, and that conversation I have with him is a conversation that is needed for this day and age that we are in. If you haven't listened to Dr. Heather Lynn's conversation I had with her, that is 3 hours of pure, brilliant madness from that amazing alternative journalist / renegade archaeologist that she is. And then on Monday, I will be dropping another interview conversation with the great Peter Mark Adams, his Ritual and Epiphany in the Mysteries of Mithras. This is one of the most beautiful books I've ever bought in my entire life. Yes, it was $100. Yes, I will keep this book. And yes, my entire dissertation on what's going on in the world will stem from this book, as well as a few others and many more. So I'd like to say again, Jin is going to be coming back on. We're starting a new radio show. This is the first episode, and this is going to be a great, long-standing, amazing friendship, not only between him and I, but between him and I and all of us. I'd like to say thank you and have a beautiful evening.
Like and subscribe.